Chapter 3464. 200 billion godstones could expand the five elements world by at least 10%. With the expansion of the five elements world, Ji Tianqing's power would increase as well. Moreover, Ji Tianqing had refined the three supreme beings' godhead fragments, and his power would increase tremendously. Even the blood flame sacred tree, which had absorbed 200,000 soldiers, many Sir Gods and three supreme beings during the Battle of Flowing River Pass, had increased tremendously. Now it had grown another 1,000 feet, and its leaves were luxuriant. The divine power aura and crimson flame that it released were also stronger. Judging by the grade of king-level divine weapons, it was now at the peak of lower king level. Perhaps in the near future, it would devour more experts' blood souls and it might evolve into middle king level. When Ji Tianqing was refining the godhead fragments, a thought flashed across his mind. He remembered that Lin Shui had mentioned something to him previously. She had asked if there was any chance for Shui Huan's power to increase again. Sir God Shui Huan was severely injured back then and lost his divine body. Ji Tianqing had used the branch of the blood flame sacred tree to refine Shui Huan's body, allowing Shui Huan to become a high-level Sir God. Now the blood flame sacred tree had evolved to king level. Ji Tianqing couldn't help but wonder if he would succeed if he took another branch of the blood flame sacred tree to replace Sir God Shui Huan's divine body. If he succeeded, wouldn't Sir God Shui Huan possess a king-level divine body? As long as he worked hard, he would be able to break through and become a real supreme being one day. However, if he didn't succeed, not only would Shui Huan lose his divine body, he might even lose his life. Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing decided to reconsider. 1.5 years passed very quickly. The three supreme beings' godhead fragments were refined by Ji Tianqing. His power had reached the peak of second heaven God King, and he was only one step away from third heaven God King. At the same time, he refined another 20 types of God Dao laws to increase his power. Now he had mastered 420 types of laws. In terms of the number of laws, he had more than 10 types than Bai Feng, who was in 7th heaven God King realm. If Bai Feng knew this secret, her eyeballs would probably fall to the ground. What the hell? Divine King Tianqing, who was able to fight him to a draw, was only in the second layer of the Divine King realm? The number of divine Dao laws grasped was actually even more than his. After finishing his cultivation, Ji Tianqing got up and stretched. He circled around the blood flame sacred tree to check on everyone's condition. Yun Yao's injuries had already recovered, and she was cultivating in seclusion. The great battle at Flowing River Pass previously enriched her actual combat experience, and also let her see the disparity between herself and Divine King powerhouses. She worked even harder in her cultivation and improved her strength bit by bit. Unfortunately, after careful observation, Ji Tianqing discovered that she basically showed no signs of breaking through to the Divine King realm. It seemed like he could only place his hopes on the 7th Divine Pearl. On the other hand, Jika's situation was a little out of Ji Tianqing's expectations. The time she broke through to the 9th level Divine Lord realm was a little later than Yun Yao. However, she had already reached peak Divine Lord realm, and was beginning to break through to the Divine King realm. Although it was difficult to break through to the Divine King realm, it was like crossing a natural chasm. But she had already started to try, and she summarized her experience from her failures, continuously strengthening her foundation. Ji Tianqing could tell that her foundation was already very robust, and she had very high hopes of breaking through to the Divine King realm. At most 1 to 200 years, at least 3 to 5 years, she should be able to succeed. Apart from that, White Dragon, Ji Wushuang, Zhanhong, Black Dragon, and Qian Yu were all high-ranked divine lords. Everyone was cultivating bitterly with all their might, looking like they would not give up until they broke through to the Divine King realm. But Ji Tianqing was clear in his heart that not all hard work could be exchanged for rewards. Not everyone would definitely break through to the Divine King realm if they followed him. Some results were actually predestined long ago. Of course, if a massive fortuitous opportunity appeared, perhaps the outcome would change. Ji Tianqing circled around the sacred tree, and prepared to leave the distorted spacetime to check on Jiang Tianyi's situation. But right at this time, the burial of heaven's voice sounded out in his mind. I have 2 pieces of good news, do you want to hear it? Ever since the burial of heaven became a mid-rank king-grade divine artifact, it had not spoken again. This was the first time it had taken the initiative to contact Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing was stunned and hurriedly asked, "What good news? Old Ancestor 3 Absolutes has become a god." The burial of heaven's tone was calm and emotionless. Ji Tianqing frowned and was a little dazed. Old Ancestor 3 Absolutes? Which Old Ancestor 3 Absolutes? The burial of heaven was probably a little speechless. After a moment of silence, it explained, "It's the old man you subdued in the profound sky continent. Later, you refined him into an ancient tree, and he has been in the sword world ever since." "Oh, so it's him." Ji Tianqing was enlightened and recalled. He chuckled and said, "It's been too long, I've forgotten about him." Chapter 3465. Even though Ji Tianqing was already a divine king, he would only look forward and set his sights on the higher realms of the divine path, and formulate a long-term plan for revenge. He would not linger on the past, nor would he waste time in reminiscing. Wuhan had not been found, and the 5 god emperors were still high above, ruling the divine realm. His blood feud had not been avenged, and the world was not at peace. But he also knew that after reaching the divine king realm, the progress of one's strength would definitely slow down. Ordinary divine king experts might only be able to break through one realm after several thousand or 10,000 years. Even a monstrous genius like him would have to spend dozens to hundreds of years before he could gradually increase his cultivation base. During this process, he would pay attention to the 5 elements world and the sword world. When the time was right, he would secretly help and nurture the living beings of these 2 worlds. To him, the living beings of the 5 elements world and the sword world were the foundation of his people, the foundation of his future forces. It might be difficult for them to achieve anything in the next 1,000 years. But thousands of years, 10,000 years later? Perhaps by then, the Earth Spirit clan of the 5 elements world and the sword world would have a large number of divine lords and a small number of divine kings. That would be his people and forces. Creak, creak, creak. The stone door of the secret room opened. Ji Tianqing walked out of the secret room and came to the main hall of Tianyi Palace. Jiang Tianyi was sitting cross-legged in the main hall, silently healing himself while driving the palace south. He had to drive the palace and could not heal himself in seclusion. In this state of healing, his injuries recovered very slowly, and he had only recovered 70%. But he loved cleanliness, and his tattered white crane cloak had long been replaced with a new one, and his messy white hair was neatly combed. "Tianyi, where are we now?" Ji Tianqing walked in front of him and asked. Jiang Tianyi opened his eyes and greeted him, replying, "Young Master Tianqing, we just entered the Red Dragon domain not long ago." Ji Tianqing nodded and asked, "When crossing the border between the 2 domains, did you encounter any ambushes?" Jiang Tianyi shook his head and said with a serious expression, "Ever since the battle at Flowing River Pass, we have not encountered any ambushes. The Red Dragon domain has not reacted at all. But the more it is like this, the more I feel strange and uneasy." Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and analyzed, "Ever since the Azura God Emperor unified the entire boundless heaven continent, it has been peaceful for 1,000 years. Those divine envoys and domain lords were all arrogant. Now that something like this had happened, they would definitely not let the matter rest, nor would they try to keep the peace. Especially Stellar Aspect Emissary, he will definitely gather many domain lords and deity kings to kill me. It was just that the news of the defeat at Flowing River Pass had just spread out. They definitely had to act cautiously. In fact, they might even reformulate their plans and not be in a hurry to act. But the next time they make a move, it will definitely be a thunderous strike." "That makes sense." Jiang Tianyi nodded in agreement and said in a low voice, 10 days ago, I sent a message to the Divine Attraction Paradise and asked the Jiang clan spies to help me gather information. At the same time, I also sent a message to a friend in Shemi Paradise, asking her to help me investigate the situation in the surrounding regions. I reckon it won't be long before they get back to me." Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, "Shemi Paradise is best at gathering information and has eyes and ears all over the world. But the people of Shemi Paradise don't care about family, and only care about money and benefits. You actually have friends?" Jiang Tianyi was stunned for a moment. For some reason, his face turned red and his gaze was a little evasive. Looking at his posture, Ji Tianqing vaguely understood something. Jiang Tianyi was a little embarrassed and hurriedly changed the topic. asking, "Young Master Tianqing, may I ask, how did you become enemies with Stellar Aspect Emissary?" Ji Tianqing replied casually, "At the beginning, I only became enemies with 2 domain lords. Those 2 domain lords suffered losses and went to Stellar Aspect Emissary for support. In the end, I killed one of the 2 domain lords and the other went missing. Stellar Aspect Emissary was also heavily injured by me. From then on, Stellar Aspect Emissary gathered many deity kings and domain lords to besiege me." "I see." Jiang Tianyi nodded and said with some indignation, "Those divine emissaries are very arrogant and domineering. They consider themselves the guards of the God Emperor, and don't put anyone in their eyes. In the past, there were a few divine emissaries who went to Divine Attraction Paradise and all of them were very arrogant and arrogant. Anyone who offended them would be charged with the crime of disobeying the God Emperor and rebelling against the God Emperor. But in reality, many divine emissaries are even inferior to those domain lords. In the eyes of us ancient clan disciples, those divine emissaries are the lackeys of the God Emperor, and the most arrogant and despicable ones." Seeing Jiang Tianyi's reaction, Ji Tianqing couldn't help but ask, "You must know that I killed a domain lord and offended a divine emissary. Aren't you worried?" "Worried about what?" Jiang Tianyi asked subconsciously. Ji Tianqing said, "About getting into trouble." Jiang Tianyi didn't think much of it and said with a smile, "What's there to be afraid of? You only killed a few domain lords and offended a divine emissary, not the Azura God Emperor. Our divine attraction paradise has been passed down for tens of thousands of years. Why would we be afraid of a mere divine emissary?" The 2 chatted for a while and Ji Tianqing told him to treat his injuries well. Jiang Tianyi said that he was fine and that his injuries had mostly healed. At this time, a stream of light suddenly flew down from the sky and landed in front of Jiang Tianyi. Jiang Tianyi's face lit up with joy and he reached out to pick up the communication jade slip, saying, "They must have found out." As he spoke, he used his divine sense to read the information in the jade slip. However, after reading the information in the jade slip, his expression became a little strange. Ji Tianqing asked, "What's wrong? What happened?" Jiang Tianyi explained, "It wasn't them who replied. It was 9th brother who asked me for help. 2 years ago, the clan sent me and 3 other brothers to the secular world to gain experience and recruit refining geniuses for the clan to replenish new blood. 9th brother Jiang Tiansheng is my half-brother from a different mother. We lived close to each other while the other 2 brothers went far away. One was in the south and the other was in the east. Jiang Tiansheng stayed in the Hengshan region for half a year and spent a lot of effort to find 2 refining geniuses. He wanted to recruit them back to the Jiang clan. He didn't expect the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect's second senior brother Chunlan to also be in the Hengshan region. After Chunlan heard the news, he rushed to intercept Jiang Tiansheng and snatched the 2 refining geniuses. Hearing this, Ji Tianqing frowned. 100 Refinement Ancient Sect? Second disciple Chunlan? Jiang Tianyi raised his head and looked at him, asking, "Young Master Tianqing, you know about the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect? You know Chunlan?" Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "As for the 100 Refinements Ancient Sect, you mentioned it before. Just like the Jiang clan, the Nangong clan, and the Raging Flame Grotto, it's an ancient clan that's proficient in crafting weapons. However, to be honest, the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect's knowledge of refining is slightly better than the other clans." Chapter 3466. Jiang Tianyi's expression was a little gloomy. "Young Master Tianqing, although I admit that you are speaking the truth, I am not convinced." Cough cough. Ji Tianqing coughed to cover up his embarrassment and comforted him. "It's fine. It is normal for the big clans to rise and fall. It is only a matter of time before the Jiang clan surpasses the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect." Jiang Tianyi felt a little better and continued, "The 100 Refinement Ancient Sect has always been arrogant and has old grudges with the Jiang clan. They have always been fighting openly and secretly. However, 9th brother recruited 2 blacksmithing geniuses first. What right did Chunlan have to snatch them? 9th brother and Chunlan had an argument and started fighting. In the end, 9th brother suffered a loss, but Chunlan did not let it go and insisted on snatching the 2 blacksmithing geniuses. How preposterous! This is too much." Speaking of this matter, Zhang Tianyi was filled with indignation and anger. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and asked, "Then what do you plan to do? Go to the Hengshan region to help your ninth brother?" Zhang Tianyi frowned and said in a low voice, "Ninth brother and I have a good relationship. He is in trouble, so I should help him. However, I want to bring you back to the Jiang clan. And now we are surrounded by so many god kings. The situation is so dangerous I cannot complicate things." Ji Tianqing continued, "However, if you don't help, not only will your ninth brother be bullied, but the two blacksmithing geniuses will also be snatched away." Zhang Tianyi hesitated for a moment before gritting his teeth and making a decision. "It's fine. Ninth brother rarely goes out and is inexperienced. I'll let him gain some experience with this matter. No matter how overboard Chenlong is, he won't dare to do anything to ninth brother. Otherwise, it will cause a war between the two clans. As for the two blacksmithing geniuses, it doesn't matter if they are snatched away. We can just find them in the future." Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "All right, you can make the decision." After speaking, he prepared to return to the secret room and continue cultivating in the God Pagoda. However, at this moment, another ray of light flew in from the sky and landed in front of Zhang Tianyi. The ray of light dispersed and a transmission jade slip appeared. Zhang Tianyi hurriedly took the jade slip and read the message inside. After a moment, his face became gloomy and serious. "Young Master Tianqing, the friend from Shimi Grotto Heaven has replied to my letter." Ji Tianqing also had a bad premonition when he saw his solemn expression and solemn tone. "What's the situation?" Zhang Tianyi said in a heavy tone. "My friend found out that the Red Dragon domain looks calm on the surface, but a huge storm is brewing. The domain lords of the surrounding domains seem to be rushing to the Red Dragon domain. Moreover, not only were there more than 10 area masters rushing over, it seemed like there were 2 divine envoys as well. They might meet up in the Red Dragon domain and give us a thunderous blow." Ji Tianqing nodded to show that he understood. He smiled and said, "Their target is not us but me." Zhang Tianyi was very smart and understood what he meant. He hurriedly said, "Young Master Tianqing, you are looking down on me. I'm not afraid of those divine envoys and region lords. I won't back down. I want to fight alongside you and bring you back to the divine attraction paradise." Ji Tianqing smiled again and said, "You must know that you represent the Jiang clan of the divine attraction paradise. You can't just say what you want. Moreover, your ninth brother is being bullied in the Hengshan region. You should go there to help him." Zhang Tianyi said firmly, "Young Master Tianqing, you are the benefactor of the Jiang clan. Now that you are in trouble, how can we just sit by and do nothing? As for going to the Hengshan region to help my ninth brother, I think it's a good idea. Let's go together." Ji Tianqing thought for a moment and nodded in agreement. Divine Envoy Xingxiang must have gathered more than 10 area masters in the Red Dragon domain. He must have set up a trap. Since that's the case, there's no need for us to fight him head-on. Let's take a detour to the Hengshan region. If they continued to fly south, they would pass through the entire Red Dragon domain. It would take at least half a month. However, the Hengshan region was southwest of the Red Dragon domain. They could avoid Divine Envoy Xingxiang's ambush by taking a detour. Originally, Zhang Tianyi didn't want to go to the Hengshan region to help Zhang Tianqing. Now that he knew about Divine Envoy Xingxiang's scheme and Ji Tianqing's agreement, he changed direction and flew to the Hengshan region. 10 days later, Heaven Dragon Pass in the southern part of the Red Dragon domain. It was located at the southern border of the Red Dragon domain. 100,000 miles south would be out of the Red Dragon domain. Heaven Dragon Pass was located in a towering mountain range. The mountains were steep and the cliffs were tens of thousands of feet high. Compared to the Manchuan Pass in the Fire Mulberry domain, this pass was smaller but the terrain was more dangerous. Originally, this was the border between the two domains. It was an important pass and a place to fight for. However, the boundless Heaven continent had been peaceful for thousands of years. There were no wars between the domains. Normally, there were only 100,000 soldiers stationed at Heaven Dragon Pass. Moreover, the 100,000 soldiers were relatively free. They spent their days patrolling and cultivating. Until 10 days ago, the peace of Heaven Dragon Pass was broken. First, the area master of the Red Dragon domain led several emperors and more than 200 Sir God experts to Heaven Dragon Pass. The 100,000 soldiers were ready for battle. They were ready to listen to the orders of the area master and the emperors. Then the area master of the Red Dragon domain and his deputy worked together to set up a divine array. The emperors, more than 200 Sir God experts, and the 100,000 soldiers helped. In 10 days they set up 3 king-level divine arrays. Heaven Dragon Pass became impregnable. It was surrounded by divine arrays. Its lethality was terrifying. During this time the area masters of other domains led a large number of Sir God experts and arrived at Heaven Dragon Pass. These area masters and Sir God experts did not rest after arriving at Heaven Dragon Pass. They also joined the ranks of setting up divine arrays. The entire Heaven Dragon Pass was filled with a tense and austere atmosphere. Everyone knew that an earth-shattering battle was about to arrive very soon. Just like the Manchuan Pass in the Fire Mulberry domain. Until today, there were 17 area masters and more than 20 Sir God experts gathered in Heaven Dragon Pass. Tonight, a few more super noble God Kings arrived at the Heaven Dragon Mountain Pass mysteriously and silently. The 100,000 soldiers were not qualified to know their identities. However, the 20 Sir God experts gathered in the Commander-in-Chief's palace saw their true faces. There were 4 of them. 3 of them were honorable divine envoys. Divine Envoy Xingxiang was the leader. Divine Envoy Ku Yun and Divine Envoy Zhaning assisted. As for the 4th Sir God, it was the area master of the neighboring Fire Mulberry domain, Sir God King Bai Feng. All the Sir God experts present had heard of the battle at Manchuan Pass and Sir God King Bai Feng's encounter. Everyone looked at Bai Feng with eyes full of sympathy. Bai Feng did not say anything. She stood silently among the many Sir God experts. She was not conspicuous. Divine Envoy Xingxiang's injuries had not healed. However, it did not seem to affect him on the surface. His face was gloomy. His eyes were sharp. His entire body was filled with killing intent. His gaze swept across the many Sir God experts in the hall. He said in a deep voice, "The traitors led by Tianxing went all the way south and killed several area masters and Sir God experts. This is the first time such a thing has happened in 1,000 years. It is simply appalling. It is so cruel that it makes one's hair stand on end. I do not wish to speak any more nonsense. In short, we have gathered a large number of troops this time. 30 Sir God experts are overseeing. We must kill them at Heaven Dragon Pass. If we let them escape, everyone here will take their own lives to atone for their sins, including me." Chapter 3467. There was dead silence in the hall. The air was heavy and oppressive. Everyone could clearly feel the determination of stellar aspect Divine Envoy. But they were not worried or afraid. Instead, they were full of confidence. Nonsense. 30 God King experts, close to 1,000 God monarchs, and 100,000 soldiers. With such a grand lineup, not to mention dealing with a few foreign race God Kings, even annihilating 2 God Envoy teams would not be a problem. As long as those foreign race God Kings passed through Heaven Dragon Pass, they would die without a doubt. This plan was set. Everyone only needed to wait patiently. However, it was because those foreign race God Kings had not appeared and their whereabouts were unknown that stellar aspect was uneasy. He looked at the night sky outside the hall and muttered to himself with a dark expression, "According to the speed of those traitors, they should be arriving at Heaven Dragon Pass soon." God Envoy Ku Yun and God Envoy Zhaning nodded in agreement. That's right. Next, everyone should enter a state of combat readiness and hide their auras as much as possible, waiting for those traitors to walk into the trap. With the lesson learned at Flowing River Pass, they will definitely be more cautious. So, we need to make some preparations and send a few scouts to search the vicinity. As long as those traitors pass through Heaven Dragon Pass, they will die without a burial place. But the only uncertainty is whether they will pass through Heaven Dragon Pass or not. By the way, stellar aspect, didn't you say that this God King Bai Feng has extraordinary talent and can detect the traitors' whereabouts? Why don't you let him check where those traitors are now? How far are they from Heaven Dragon Pass? The gazes of the 2 God envoys landed on the crowd and gathered on Bai Feng. More than 20 God King experts also looked at him with burning eyes. Many of them had jealousy hidden in their eyes. After all, Bai Feng could attract the attention and high regard of the 3 God envoys. He would definitely have good fortune in the future. Stellar Aspect nodded slightly and looked at Bai Feng. He said, Bai Feng, you have the talent of God's eye. You can predict fortune and misfortune, and deduce heavenly secrets. Moreover, you have met those traitors and fought with them before. You are not unfamiliar with their situation. At this crucial moment, I will have to trouble you to cast a spell and deduce their whereabouts. Stellar Aspect's status was higher than Bai Feng's, but he was not as strong as Bai Feng and they were old friends. In front of so many god kings, Stellar Aspect Divine Emissary was very polite to him. Bai Feng naturally did not dare to decline. He also knew that his biggest purpose in coming to Tianlong Mountain Pass was not to participate in the battle. Instead, he used his divine eyes of annihilation to help everyone search for Ji Tianqing and the others. This king will naturally obey Lord Stellar Aspect Envoy's orders. Bai Feng cupped his hands and bowed. He then walked out of the crowd and stood in the middle of the hall. The other god kings retreated in a hurry. They stood at the edge of the hall and watched Bai Feng cast her technique quietly. Bai Feng took out 9 mysterious flags and planted them on the ground of the palace to form a simple divine formation. After that, he withdrew an ancient fiery copper geomantic compass and sat cross-legged on the ground. 3 divine envoys, please lend me a hand. Bai Feng made her request. The 3 divine envoys did not hesitate and quickly followed his instructions. They stood in different positions and cast spells to assist him. Next, Bai Feng focused on using a secret technique. She activated the Annihilation Divine Eye and deduced the location of the Palace of Heaven's Will. The hall was silent, and time passed quietly. For hours quickly passed. Many of the god kings were getting impatient. They secretly transmitted their voices to each other and questioned whether Bai Feng was reliable or not. Fortunately, Bai Feng's technique was nearing its end, and he had finally deduced the result. The 9 mysterious flags all shone with a dazzling divine light. The fiery copper geomantic compass in his hand also released a 7-colored divine light. 10 streaks of divine light converged above his head, forming a screen of light that resembled a sea of stars. It was dazzling, vast, and profound. A boundless and vast aura emanated from the screen of light. The 20-odd god kings in the hall, including the 3 divine envoys, all wore solemn expressions. A hint of respect and wariness arose in their hearts. The god kings who had secretly doubted Bai Feng all shut their mouths. They did not dare to doubt him anymore. As the saying went, once an expert made a move, the truth would be revealed. Among the 30 god kings, Bai Feng was not the strongest. He could only be ranked in the top 5. However, his divine ability and consummate skill had shocked everyone. Soon, a hazy and blurry image appeared on the light screen that was as vast as the starry sky. A blurry divine ship streaked across the sky and sea of clouds like a bolt of lightning and landed in the middle of a towering mountain range. If one looked carefully, they would discover that there seemed to be an ancient city in the depths of the mountain range. However, the image stopped there and quickly dissipated. Whoosh! The screen of light dissipated. The 9 flags and the fiery copper geomantic compass fell silent and became dim. Bai Feng ended his technique and opened his eyes. The 20-odd god kings stared at him. The 3 divine envoys could not wait to ask about the result. How was it? Did you find their whereabouts? Bai Feng, where are those traitors now? Are they close to the Heaven Dragon Pass? Facing the 3 divine envoys' anxious gazes, Bai Feng's expression was a little strange. He pondered for a moment before putting away the 9 flags and the fiery copper geomantic compass. The divine eye of annihilation on his forehead also closed. Seeing his strange expression, Divine Envoy Xing Xiang asked even more anxiously, Bai Feng, what happened? Tell me. Bai Feng hesitated for a moment before saying in a low voice, Lord Divine Envoys, those traitors are very far away from us. They are not in the Red Dragon domain. The 3 divine envoys' eyes widened when they heard this. The 20-odd god kings were also stunned and could not help but exclaim, What? Not in the Red Dragon domain? Are you kidding me? Did we do all this for nothing? Bai Feng, you must be mistaken, right? I just said that he's definitely not reliable. Divining heavenly secrets and predicting good or bad luck. That's ridiculous. I can't believe you can say such ridiculous things. The originally silent hall exploded with discussions, exclamations, and doubts. Baifeng became the target of public criticism, and was criticized and denied by many god kings. Divine Envoy Xing Xiang's expression was gloomy. He waved his hand to signal for everyone to be quiet. He stared at Baifeng with a dignified gaze and asked seriously, "Baifeng, our spies clearly detected that those traitors passed through the Fire Mulberry domain and went south into the Red Dragon domain. Are you sure they are not in the Red Dragon domain now?" Others did not believe Baifeng, but he did. Baifeng nodded and said with certainty, "I'm very sure." "Then where are they?" Divine Envoy Xing Xiang asked. Baifeng frowned and thought for a moment before replying, "In the southwest, in the Hengshan domain. It seems to be in the Hengshan Empire." The 20-odd god kings were still questioning and discussing Baifeng, but Divine Envoy Xing Xiang suppressed them with a dignified manner. He discussed with Ku Yun and Zhaning for a moment and quickly made a decision. Pick 15 god kings to stay at Heaven Dragon Pass and wait for orders. The other 11 god kings are to immediately rush to the Hengshan Empire. Baifeng, come with us first and rush there as fast as you can. Chapter 3468. This was the decision made by the 3 divine messengers after a discussion. The 20 or so god kings present had no right to question him. They could only obey. Moreover, Baifeng spoke with certainty. The many god kings found it hard to refute. Since the 3 divine envoys believed that it was true, then he would take it as true for the time being. Soon the 3 groups of people were selected and prepared. Of the 15 god kings, 6 of them were domain lords. All of them were left in the Heaven Dragon Pass, waiting for the next target. This was also in case Baifeng's calculation was wrong. If Ji Tianxing and the others entered the Tianlong Pass, they would at least have enough power to eliminate them. The other 11 god kings were led by a higher god king, as they drove their divine ships towards the Hengshan Empire. As for the 3 divine envoys and Baifeng, they took the lead and left Tianlong Pass on a top king-grade divine artifact. That divine artifact was called the Void-Piercing Hairpin. It was said that it was a relic left behind by the mother of the Shadow Executioner divine envoy. It wasn't an offensive or defensive divine artifact. Instead, it was a flying divine artifact that could travel through space and travel through outer space. In the boundless universe, the sky-piercing hairpin could travel thousands of miles in an instant. Flying in the divine realm, one's speed would increase by several folds. Ordinary god kings would need half a month to reach Hengshan region's Hengshan Empire. As for the 3 divine envoys and Baifeng, relying on the power of the space-piercing hairpin, they would only need about 5 days to arrive. The reason why the 4 of them went first was that the space inside the hairpin was limited and could not fit so many people. If he wanted to continuously teleport and travel through space, he would have to expend a huge amount of divine power. The 4 of them had to take turns to replenish the sky-piercing hairpin with divine power. Moreover, with each additional person, the consumption of divine power would multiply. If it wasn't for the fact that Baifeng possessed the divine eyes of annihilation, he would still need to deduce the heavenly secrets to find Ji Tianxing and the others. With God Envoy Zhanaying's personality, he probably wouldn't even want to bring him along. Hengshan region, Hengshan Empire. In the endless Chang'e mountain range, there was a majestic ancient city that had existed for 10,000 years. It was called Chang'e City. This city was located in a remote area, in a vast mountain range with a radius of a few million miles. Usually, the number of gods and commoners that came to this place was far fewer than the other main cities of the Hengshan Empire. However, Chang'e City was located on top of a divine vein, so the divine power of heaven and earth was abundant. The millions of miles of mountain range around the majestic city contained an endless supply of cultivation resources and treasures. As a result, the millions of celestial citizens in Perpetual Joy City were blessed by the heavens. They had countless experts and geniuses. After tens of thousands of years, the city still showed signs of vicissitudes. However, the city was exceptionally prosperous. More than 6 million people of the god race lived and worked in peace. It was quite lively. The various trades and professions related to the cultivation of the divine way had also developed and expanded to the peak. Every few years or decades, Chang'e City would have a few great grandmasters who specialized in alchemy, artifact forging or formations. Of course, those were all Divine Lord realm powerhouses. If they were older, they would be respected by the people and would be recruited by the powerful forces of the empire. However, every few decades a few younger grandmasters would emerge. This was the proverbial genius. All kinds of alchemy geniuses, artifact forging geniuses, array formation geniuses, the citizens of Changle City were already used to it. A few months ago, Jiang Tianxing shouldered the Jiang clan's recruitment mission and came to the Hongshan Empire. After many searches and tests, he still couldn't find the ideal refining genius. Unknowingly, he heard that Changle City was blessed by the heavens and had many geniuses. Therefore, Jiang Tianxing came to Changle City full of anticipation and started to search for a target. He was different from Jiang Tianyi. Jiang Tianyi wanted to save time and directly occupied a land with a spirit vein. He spread the news to the outside world and challenged all the artifact forging grandmasters. In order to attract those artifact forging grandmasters, he pretended to be arrogant and set generous rewards. Then, he would choose a suitable person from the many artifact forging grandmasters. Jiang Tianxing kept a low profile and wandered around Changle City, secretly observing and looking for a suitable target. Speaking of which, his luck was not bad. 10 days ago, 2 young geniuses had set up an arena at 100 Flower Garden in the southern part of the city and competed in terms of strength and artifact forging. After asking around, Jiang Tianxing found out that those 2 young geniuses were the most famous young geniuses in Changle City in the past 100 years. One of them was the first young master of a grand family called Lin Zhan. The other was the first senior brother of Changle Dao College called Zhan Longxiang. Both of them were very young and had just become high-level divine lords not long ago. They were skilled in artifact forging. As the saying went, a mountain could not accommodate 2 tigers. Moreover, these 2 top geniuses were equally proud and arrogant. Apart from cultivating the divine Tao, they were also skilled in artifact forging. Chapter 3469. The 100 Refinement Ancient Sect and the Jiang clan had an old grudge that hadn't been resolved even after thousands of years. Although Kenshin had helped the Jiang clan to tide over the crisis and suppress the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect in the past, the Jiang clan was still in danger. However, the 100 Refinements Ancient Sect would never forget this grudge. However, the boundless heaven continent was unified, and the Azura God Emperor controlled the world, desiring to disintegrate the various great ancient clans. The 18 ancient clans had no choice but to form an alliance. The 100 Refinement Ancient Sect could only suppress their hatred and temporarily not fight with the Jiang clan to avoid destroying the ancient clan alliance. But even so, it was inevitable for them to fight in the dark. Jiang Tianxing had left the Divine Attraction Paradise not only to gain experience in the mortal world, but also to take on the mission of recruiting disciples. However, Chunlan was different. He was only using an excuse to leave the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect to settle some old grudges in the Hongshan Empire. Coincidentally, he came to Perpetual Joy City and sensed the aura of a Divine King expert. Only then did he find Jiang Tianxing. Then he learned that Jiang Tianxing had recruited 2 refining geniuses, so he wanted to snatch them away. The Jiang clan wanted to absorb new blood, but so did the 100 Refinements Ancient Sect. In fact, the 18 ancient clans had to constantly absorb geniuses from other clans in order to maintain their prosperity for tens of thousands of years. Moreover, Chunlan knew that the 2 geniuses were not on good terms with each other, so she was even more determined to snatch him away. He also found 2 geniuses and used his identity as a disciple of the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect to recruit them. Furthermore, he praised the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect to the heavens and banished the Jiang clan to the ground. He wanted to kidnap the 2 geniuses back. However, the 2 geniuses were very stubborn and were resolutely unwilling to travel with each other. Chunlan could only think of another way. When Jiang Tianxing found out about this, he went to confront Chunlan in a fit of rage. When the 2 of them met, it was inevitable that they would quarrel, ridicule, and humiliate each other. Afterwards, the 2 of them got into a conflict and fought fiercely in the mountains outside the city, destroying tens of thousands of li of mountains and rivers. Chunlan was the second senior brother of the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect. He had cultivated for 10,000 years and was at the peak of the 6th level of the God King realm. Jiang Tianxing was the 9th young master of the Jiang clan. He had only cultivated for 7,000 years, and was at the 5th level of the Divine King realm. The result was obvious. Jiang Tiansheng was at a disadvantage and even suffered some injuries. Fortunately, both of them restrained themselves. It was more of a spar, and neither of them dared to use too much force. If things got out of hand and the Jiang clan started a war with the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect, they would definitely be blamed by the other clans. After the conflict, Jiang Tiansheng felt wronged and sent a message to Jiang Tianyi asking for help. The matter of recruiting the two geniuses had reached a stalemate. Both Jiang Tiansheng and Chen Lan were caught between a rock and a hard place. They could only try their best to persuade the two geniuses. It was a little unrealistic to take in both geniuses. However, both of them were unwilling to accept only one and give the other to the other. Of course, it wasn't as if they hadn't considered kidnapping the two geniuses by force. But he couldn't do that. After all, the Jiang clan and the 100 Refinements Ancient Sect could not afford to lose face like this. The primordial ancient clan had once stood at the peak of the continent, looking down on the common people. Now, if they wanted to recruit disciples from other clans, they actually had to resort to robbery. This was too humiliating. The sun was setting. In the Green Phoenix Manor, north of Chang'an City, Ji Tianxing, Jiang Tianyi, and Jiang Tianxing sat at the stone table under the pine tree, calmly drinking tea. This manor was located at the peak of Green Phoenix Peak, 800 miles north of Chang'an City. The entire manor was shrouded in clouds. The three of them sat in the manor, overlooking the nearby Chang'an City. Jiang Tianxing rubbed his brows in distress and said to Jiang Tianyi, "Seventh brother, the situation is like this. That brat Chen Lan is unreasonable and despicable. No matter what, we can't let him have his way. Otherwise, the Jiang clan will be humiliated, and I won't be able to raise my head in front of him in the future." Jiang Tianyi nodded slightly and said calmly, "Although Chen Lan is strong, there is nothing to be afraid of. We'll go and meet him later. The main problem now is that the two young geniuses are competing with each other and can't tolerate each other. If we want to bring both of them back to the Jiang clan, we have to find a way to resolve the conflict and persuade them." Jiang Tianxing nodded and said, "Yes. Chen Lan saw this point and pestered us relentlessly. He won't give up no matter what. His goal is clear. He has to snatch at least one of the young geniuses. If he works harder and manages to snatch both of them, he'll have profited greatly. This brat is too shameless. I was the one who discovered the two geniuses first." At the mention of this matter, Jiang Tiansheng was filled with anger and kept complaining. Although he and Jiang Tianyi were half-brothers, their height and appearance were very similar, but Jiang Tianyi was different. However, there was a clear difference in the way they dressed and their temperaments. Jiang Tianyi had a head of white hair and wore a robe made of crane feathers. His clothes were snow-white and his personality was more stable. Jiang Tianxing, on the other hand, had a head of golden hair and wore dark gold armor. He carried a divine sword on his back, and his personality was more impulsive and immature. The two brothers discussed for a while, but couldn't think of a feasible solution. Ji Tianxing, who had been silent all this time, spoke up at the right time. "The situation isn't complicated. We can't let Chen Lan have his way and we can't forcefully kidnap the two geniuses. Let's go find Chen Lan and force him to back down. Then we'll find the two young geniuses and think of a way to persuade them to bring them back to the Jiang clan. There's no time to lose. Let's act quickly." Jiang Tianyi nodded and stood up subconsciously. Jiang Tianxing sat on the stone chair and turned his head to look at Ji Tianxing. He frowned and asked Jiang Tianyi, "Seventh brother, who is this person? Didn't I introduce him to you just now?" Jiang Tianyi glared at him unhappily. "This is young Master Tianxing, my friend." Jiang Tianxing frowned again and asked softly, "Seventh brother, this is a grudge between the Jiang clan and the 100 Refinements Ancient Sect. It's not appropriate for you to bring an outsider into this matter, right?" Jiang Tianyi purposely put on a stern face and slapped the back of his head. He said unhappily, "Little Jiu, be more polite to young Master Tianxing. Don't be rude. He's one of us, not an outsider. He's just a friend and not a disciple of the Jiang clan. How can he not be an outsider?" Jiang Tianxing held the back of his head and muttered, "If we really bring him to deal with Chen Lan, The 100 Refinements Ancient Sect will definitely use this as an excuse and will be criticized by the other clans. Jiang Tianyi became even angrier and stared at him with a stern face. He shouted coldly, "Little Jiao, can you not be so stubborn? You don't believe me, right? Do you want me to tell you his true identity before you'll stop?" Hearing this, Jiang Tianqing's eyes lit up. He looked up expectantly and asked, "What do you mean, seventh brother? What other identity does he have? Tell me quickly." Jiang Tianyi realized that he had let it slip in a moment of desperation. However, Jiang Tianqing didn't let it go and insisted on telling him the answer. Jiang Tianyi was annoyed and could only sigh. He said solemnly, "Little Jiao, I'm only telling you this because you're my brother. However, you must keep it a secret." Jiang Tianqing was filled with anticipation and excitement. He nodded like a chick pecking at rice. Jiang Tianyi said with a serious face, "This young Master Tianqing is the great benefactor who saved our Jiang clan 1,000 years ago. Second uncle and third uncle are his in-name disciples. He's our Master Grandpa." Huh. Jiang Tianqing was petrified. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 3470. Master Grandpa? Seventh brother, are you sure? I've never heard that you have such a friend. You didn't manage to recruit any armament refining geniuses and instead found a Master Grandpa for us? Jiang Tianqing regained his senses and was filled with disbelief and unwillingness. He looked at Jiang Tianyi and Ji Tianqing strangely. How can the benefactor who saved the Jiang clan 1,100 years ago be so young? Jiang Tianyi frowned. "Ninth brother, can you not be so shallow? Isn't it normal for an expert like young Master Tianqing to remain young forever?" Jiang Tianqing still didn't believe him and asked again. Since that benefactor could save the Jiang clan and make second uncle and third uncle admire him, he must be at least a peak god king. Even if he isn't a peak god king, he should be a 9th stage realm upper level god king, right? What about this young Master Tianqing? What realm is he at now? Jiang Tianyi was speechless and couldn't answer. No choice, he couldn't see through Ji Tianqing's cultivation realm. He could only see that Ji Tianqing's aura was restrained and his power was unfathomable. However, he recalled that Ji Tianqing had fought with Bai Feng for a long time, and he wasn't able to defeat her. It was imaginable that Ji Tianqing shouldn't be a upper-level god king. Even if he was, his power should be about the same as Bai Feng, around the 7th stage of the god king realm. This was indeed a suspicious point that couldn't be explained. Jiang Tianqing stared at him and asked, "Seventh brother, why aren't you talking?" Jiang Tianyi frowned and said sternly, "Ninth brother, how can you be so rude to question someone's cultivation realm? Anyway, you only need to know that young Master Tianqing can deal with Qianlan from the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect." Really? Jiang Tianqing was still suspicious and sized up Ji Tianqing before asking Jiang Tianyi, "Seventh brother, you can't joke about this. Since you're sure that he's the benefactor of the Jiang clan, why didn't you report to the clan leader?" Jiang Tianyi stared at him and said, "What's the use of reporting to the clan leader? Young Master Tianqing has already agreed to return to the Divine Attraction Paradise with me. At that time, I want to give everyone a surprise." Jiang Tianqing put on a fake smile and curled his lips. "Anyway, this is your idea. It has nothing to do with me. Don't drag me into it." "You!" Jiang Tianyi clenched his teeth in anger, wishing he could beat him up. This clearly showed that they didn't believe him and felt that he was fooling around. They were afraid that they would be implicated by him and be punished by the patriarch. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing said indifferently, "Jiang Tianqing, whether you believe it or not, let's put this matter aside for now. The most important thing right now is to have Jiang Tianyi accompany you to find Qianlan and resolve this matter as soon as possible. We don't have much time to waste." With his reminder, Jiang Tianyi finally remembered that stellar aspect divine envoy, domain lords, and god kings were searching for them. The Hengshan region was right next to the Crimson Dragon region. If they were delayed for too long, there was no guarantee that divine king stellar aspect and company would not come looking for them. Therefore, this matter had to be resolved quickly. Yes. Jiang Tianyi hurriedly nodded and said to Jiang Tianqing, "Ninth brother, where is Qianlan? Let's go find him now. This matter cannot be delayed." lest something unexpected happens. Jiang Tianxing pointed to the southwest of Chang'e City and said, "That guy is at the Gold Laurel Palace. All right, let's go meet him now." Jiang Tianyi nodded and pulled Jiang Tianxing into the sky, flying towards Chang'e City. After flying for 1,000 feet, he realized that Ji Tianxing did not follow and was still standing in the manor. Moreover, Ji Tianxing sat back on the stone bench and continued drinking tea. Jiang Tianyi was stunned and asked without hesitation, "Young Master Tianxing, why aren't you coming with us?" Ji Tianxing nodded and smiled. "It's enough for the two of you to go. I'll wait here for your good news." Jiang Tianyi was immediately put in a difficult position. He smiled bitterly and said, "Young Master Tianxing, if you don't come with us, I don't feel confident." Jiang Tianxing curled his lips and looked at Ji Tianxing with a smile that was not a smile. He said, "You don't dare to go? Are you afraid that if we really fight, you'll be exposed?" As soon as he finished speaking, Jiang Tianyi slapped him on the back of his head and said unhappily, "If you don't know how to speak, then shut up." Jiang Tianxing saw that his seventh brother was really angry and obediently shut up. Jiang Tianyi flew back to the manor and came before Ji Tianxing. He bowed sincerely and said, "Young Master Tianxing, my ninth brother is young and inexperienced. He has always lived in the Divine Attraction Grotto Heaven, and this is the first time he has gone out to train. Therefore, he spoke without thinking and offended you. Please don't lower yourself to his level." Jiang Tianxing was the ninth genius of the Jiang clan, and was called the ninth young master. He had a noble status. In the Divine Attraction Grotto Heaven, he was used to living like a prince. However, he had lived for 7,000 years and was called young and inexperienced by Jiang Tianyi. Ji Tianxing was speechless. After all, he had lived for less than 2,000 years in both lifetimes. There was no comparison between people. However, since Jiang Tianyi said so, he had to go. Otherwise, it would seem that he was too petty and would really argue with Jiang Tianxing. Helpless, Ji Tianxing could only nod and say, "Jiang Tianyi, you misunderstand. Since you insist on inviting me, then I'll go with you." Seeing that he agreed, Jiang Tianyi breathed a sigh of relief. Then, the three of them flew through the sky and went straight to the Gold Osmanthus Palace in the southwest of Chang'e City. The sun gradually set and night was about to arrive. The Gold Osmanthus Palace was lit. Chun Lan, dressed in a black robe, was sitting in the study and carefully reading a book. He looked like a young man in his 30s. He was tall and muscular with thick eyebrows and big eyes. Behind him stood a white-haired elder in a black robe, dressed like a bodyguard. He stood with his hands by his side. "Young Master Lan, this is the detailed information on Lin Zhan and the Battle Dragon Elephant, including the Lin Clan and Chang'e Dao College. I have investigated it thoroughly. I think that if we want to recruit these two blacksmithing geniuses, we can find another breakthrough and have a chance." Chun Lan nodded and said, "Okay, then I will take a good look at this information." At this moment, the voice of a guard sounded at the door of the study. "Sir, there is a young man with the surname Jiang outside. He wants to see you." Obviously, only the white-haired elder was from the 100 Refinement Ancient sect. He followed Chun Lan to serve and protect him. All the guards and maids in the Gold Osmanthus Palace were from Chang'e City. However, Chun Lan had spent a considerable amount of money to rent this palace temporarily. "Jiang Tianxing? That brat is here to humiliate himself again?" Chun Lan closed the book and put it into his spatial ring. His lips curled into a cold smile. "Uncle Yan, let's go see what that brat is up to." With that, he brought Uncle Yan out of the study and rushed to the guest hall. In the hall, Ji Tianxing, Jiang Tianxing, and Jiang Tianyi were all seated and drinking tea. As soon as Chun Lan entered the hall, he laughed mockingly and said, "Jiang Tianxing, was the beating from before not enough? Do you want to be beaten again tonight?" Chapter 3471. His voice was heard before he even saw him. Chun Lan's arrogant tone caused Jiang Tianxing's face to turn green. His eyes were filled with anger. He immediately stood up and retorted coldly, "Chun Lan, don't be so smug. Tonight, my seventh brother will teach you a lesson and let you know the immensity of heaven and earth." As soon as Jiang Tianxing finished speaking, Chun Lan appeared in the main hall with the white-robed old man. He glanced at Jiang Tianxing before his gaze landed on Jiang Tianyi and Ji Tianxing. As for Ji Tianxing, he only glanced at him and skipped over him. After all, Ji Tianxing was drinking tea with a calm expression. His aura was restrained and he was as low-key as an ordinary person. On the other hand, Jiang Tianyi's face was stern, and his body emitted a divine aura that could not be underestimated. Chun Lan sized Jiang Tianyi up and sneered. "Huh? Did you beat up the small one and then the big one came? Jiang Tianxing, you're really something. You're a piece of trash and you asked your brother to support you? I was wondering why you suddenly became so bold and dared to take the initiative to come here. So it's because you found a backer." As he spoke, Chun Lan sat down on the main seat and said disdainfully, "It's a pity that your seventh brother, Jiang Tianyi, is not my match. You guys are destined to be humiliated." Chun Lan's words and attitude were extremely arrogant. He did not put Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianyi in his eyes at all. Jiang Tianyi's face turned green as he clenched his fists tightly. Jiang Tianyi, on the other hand, was calm. He looked at Chun Lan with a cold smile and said mockingly, "My ninth brother is the youngest among the 9 geniuses of the Jiang clan and is ranked last. You, the second senior brother of the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect, are proud of defeating him and are still acting so smug. It seems like the disciples of the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect are only so capable." "What did you say?" Chun Lan's face darkened and his eyes were filled with anger. Jiang Tianyi laughed even more mockingly and said, "Although I'm only ranked 7th among the 9 disciples of the Jiang clan, it's still enough. Against you, the second senior brother of the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect, it's enough. You dare to look down on me?" Chun Lan's expression darkened as he growled angrily, "Kid, if I don't teach you an unforgettable lesson, you won't know how powerful I am." As he spoke, his entire body burst forth with surging divine power aura. Clearly, he was about to attack. But Jiang Tianyi smiled contemptuously and said, "Talking to a boor like you is really tiring. Very angry, right? You want to fight, don't you? It's a pity that Lin Zhan and the battle dragon elephant are not going to compete in fighting, but in refining weapons." Chun Lan frowned deeply and remained silent. Indeed, he had defeated Jiang Tianxing. However, Lin Zhan and Zhanlong Xiang were not persuaded by him to follow him back to the 100 Refinements Ancient Sect. After a moment of silence, he asked, "So what you mean is you want to compete with me in refining?" "Of course." Jiang Tianyi sneered with a mocking expression. "We're all disciples of forging families. What else can we compete in? Could it be that they were going to have a duel? Then let our second brother compete with you. I guarantee that he will beat you up so badly that even your mother won't be able to recognize you. You're courting death." Chun Lan was so angry that his face turned black and his chest rose and fell rapidly. The white-haired elder frowned slightly and hurriedly sent a message to remind him, "Young Master Lan, please calm down. The other party obviously came prepared and purposely provoked you." Only then did Chun Lan come to his senses and nod silently. He then looked at Jiang Tianyi and asked, "Tell me, how do you want to compete?" Jiang Tianyi answered without hesitation, "We'll compete to see who can successfully forge the most perfect divine weapon in the shortest amount of time. Whoever loses will withdraw from this competition, and will not be allowed to touch the 2 forging geniuses." Seeing how confident Jiang Tianyi was, Chun Lan was stunned and frowned as he considered it. "From what I know, Jiang Tianyi's forging skills can only be considered above average. His experience, skills, and maturity should be slightly weaker than mine. I can't possibly lose to him. But for him to be so confident, does he have something to rely on?" Thinking of this, Chun Lan became more cautious and asked Jiang Tianyi, "Where will we compete? When will we compete? Will you compete with me?" He had to ask clearly to avoid falling into Jiang Tianyi's trap. Jiang Tianyi explained patiently, "Tonight in the Gold Laurel Palace, the winner will be decided by 2 out of 3 wins. All 3 of us can participate in the competition. Similarly, you and that old man can also participate." Chun Lan frowned again and sank into deep thought. 2 out of 3 wins? If that's the case, one person is indeed not enough. It's almost impossible to forge 3 weapons in a short amount of time. That kid Jiang Tianxing is too weak. Even if he participates in the competition, he will lose without a doubt and can be ignored. It seems that Jiang Tianyi and that white-robed youth will be the ones to compete. Thinking of this, Chanlan stared closely at Ji Tianqing and muttered to himself, "This kid looks ordinary and doesn't look like a divine craftsman. What is Jiang Tianyi doing?" At this moment, the white-haired elder reminded him, "Young Master Lan, that kid is human and very unfamiliar. He doesn't look like a Jiang clan disciple." Chen Lan's eyes lit up. He pointed at Ji Tianqing and shouted at Jiang Tianyi, "Jiang Tianyi, who is that kid? How come I don't know that the Jiang clan has such a person? This is a matter between our sect and the Jiang clan. Why are you asking an outsider for help?" Jiang Tianyi was prepared. Without waiting for Ji Tianqing to reply, he took the initiative to answer. "This young Master Tianqing joined the Jiang clan 1,000 years ago. He just hasn't shown himself. I can swear to the heavens that he is definitely a Jiang clan disciple." Jiang Tianyi thought to himself, "Young Master Tianqing is our clan's benefactor and the master of second uncle and third uncle. He should be considered a Jiang clan disciple, right?" Chen Lan couldn't refute this. He looked at Ji Tianqing a few more times but couldn't find any clues. He could only nod and agree. "All right, then we'll follow this rule." Jiang Tianyi raised his hand and said, "Wait. We still have to summon the 2 blacksmithing geniuses and let them watch the competition with their own eyes. Only in this way will they know what choice they should make." "All right." Chen Lan had the same idea, so she nodded and agreed without any hesitation. Then Chen Lan and Jiang Tianqing took out jade slips and sent messages to Lin Zhan and Zhan Longxiang. Everyone waited for a few minutes before the 2 blacksmithing geniuses arrived one after another. Lin Zhan was dressed luxuriously and had greasy hair and a powdered face. He was the standard young master of an aristocratic family. Zhan Longxiang had a rough appearance and was dressed simply. He even wore the Taoist robes of Changgledao College and a square crown on his head. His eyes were as sharp as an eagle's. After the 2 blacksmithing geniuses arrived, Chen Lan explained the situation to them and the meaning of the competition. Lin Zhan smiled and was full of anticipation, waiting to watch a good show. Zhan Longxiang was expressionless and said in a low voice, "Even if the 2 divine blacksmiths decide the winner, Lin Zhan and I will not join the same sect." Chen Lan was a little embarrassed and hurriedly explained, "It's okay. This competition is only to decide who will withdraw." Actually, he hated Zhan Longxiang. This fellow looked rough and had a very old-fashioned and dull personality. He was not as smart as Lin Zhan and was more likable. Chapter 3472. The rules had been set. Those who were supposed to be there had arrived. Hence, Chen Lan asked Uncle Yen to close the doors of the gold Kasha Palace. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Chen Lan waved his hand and shot out hundreds of divine lights into the ground. In an instant, several divine arrays were activated and enveloped the entire palace. In this way, no one would be disturbed while refining weapons in the palace. The first round would be between Jiang Tianyi and Chen Lan. Uncle Yen instructed Chen Lan. Chen Lan nodded to indicate that she understood. Only then did she step into the hall. Jiang Tianyi took a deep breath and calmed himself down before walking to the center of the palace. Jiang Tiansheng quickly cheered him on and waved his fist. "Seventh brother, I believe you can do it." Jiang Tianyi turned around and smiled at him. Then he looked at Ji Tianqing. Actually, what he cared about the most was Ji Tianqing's attitude. Unfortunately, Ji Tianqing looked indifferent as if he didn't take it to heart. Jiang Tianyi was a little depressed. He could only turn around and walk to the center of the palace. He and Chen Lan sat cross-legged 1,000 feet apart, one on the left and one on the right. In the first round, let's see who can refine a low-grade king-grade divine artifact faster. How about it? Chen Lan was the first to speak as he stared at Jiang Tianyi. His strength was similar to Jiang Tianyi's at the 6th level of the Divine King realm. However, he had cultivated for a long time and had reached the peak of the 6th level. He had refined at least 80 king-grade low-grade divine artifacts, if not 100. He was confident that he could beat Jiang Tianyi. Of course, Jiang Tianyi couldn't show his fear. He nodded without hesitation. All right. Then the first round began. Both of them took out their cauldrons as fast as they could. Jiang Tianyi's bronze cauldron and Chen Lan's cauldron were both mid-grade king-grade artifacts. Both of them were outstanding middle-grade divine blacksmiths. The moment they took out their cauldrons, they immediately entered a state of full concentration. An invisible aura emanated from their bodies. Both of them forgot about their surroundings and immersed themselves in refining weapons. First, he cast the spell and activated the array formation in the cauldron. Once the divine flames in the cauldron rose and the temperature was suitable, he added the refining materials. Their movements were extremely orderly, extremely skilled, precise, and without the slightest hesitation. Even the materials used by the two of them were the same, 9 sets. Furthermore, the divine weapons they were going to refine were the same. They were both divine swords. There was no other way. Most of the king-grade divine artifacts they refined were weapons. Among the weapons, swords were the most common. Seeing the chemistry between Chunlan and Jiang Tianyi, as well as their skill and speed in smithing, the crowd's interest was piqued. Uncle Yan stood in the upper left corner of the hall, his eyes fixed on Chunlan. Ji Tianqing and Jiang Tianxing sat on the right side of the hall. Lin Zhan and Zhan Longxiang sat near the entrance of the main hall, separated by a few hundred feet. Even though they didn't get along. But at this moment, both of them had neglected each other. They all stared at Chunlan and Jiang Tianyi with rapt attention. They carefully watched the artifact forging, afraid that they would miss any detail. The main hall was silent, and the atmosphere was solemn. But Ji Tianqing's reaction was calm. He didn't pay attention to the two divine blacksmiths and wasn't as nervous as Jiang Tianxing. No one knew. Actually, he already had an answer in his heart and predicted the outcome. Time passed very quickly. Unknowingly, 20 hours had passed in the main hall. At this time it was just midnight outside the main hall. Only 4 hours had passed. Without a doubt, the divine formation that enveloped the main hall had a time array formation that sped up time by 5 times. Ji Tianqing noticed this and felt slightly comforted. Fortunately, there's time acceleration. Otherwise, waiting for so long would be too boring. As for Uncle Yan, Jiang Tiansheng, Lin Zhan and Zhan Longxiang, they couldn't feel the passage of time at all. All their attention was on Jiang Tianyi and Chunlan, and their hearts were in their throats. At this time, Chunlan and Jiang Tianyi had finished forging the sword embryos and were beginning to inscribe the laws and restriction runes on them. From the looks of it, the two of them were equally matched in terms of speed. But the most crucial moment had arrived. The speed, accuracy, and success rate of inscribing laws and restriction runes were the criteria that determined a divine blacksmith's skill. Jiang Tiansheng and Uncle Yan's expressions became even more solemn. Lin Zhan and Zhan Longxiang were even more engrossed as they analyzed and guessed in their hearts. These two divine blacksmiths seem to be equally skilled. I wonder who will win. Currently, it seems that the divine blacksmith of the Jiang clan has a more stable and reserved personality. He should be easier to get along with. If I enter the Jiang clan, he should take care of me, right? Although divine blacksmith Chunlan of the 100 Refinement Ancient sect is arrogant, he's the easiest to serve. I only need to put in some effort to win his favor. Hopefully, divine blacksmith Chunlan will win. Lin Zhan and Zhan Longxiang each had their own thoughts. Unknowingly, another 6 days passed. Chunlan and Jiang Tianyi's forging was nearing the end. Their swords were layered with more than 90 laws and restrictions, and more than 900 types of laws and restrictions. Only now did the gap between their forging speed widen slightly. When Chunlan finished inscribing the 97th law rune, Jiang Tianyi had only finished the 96th law rune, and was still inscribing restrictions and restrictions. Such a small difference naturally couldn't escape the eyes of Ji Tianqing, Jiang Tiansheng, and Uncle Yan. Ji Tianqing's expression was still calm. Jiang Tianqing's expression became more solemn and anxious. Uncle Yan, on the other hand, heaved a sigh of relief and had a gratified smile on his face. As long as there were no accidents, the outcome was set. However, Lin Zhan and Zhan Longxiang couldn't see what was going on inside the cauldron, and didn't know the difference between the two divine blacksmiths. An hour passed, 2 hours passed. Finally, another hour and a half passed. Chunlan had successfully inscribed 100 laws and 1,000 restrictions. He was the first to complete the low-grade king-grade divine sword. Phew! Chunlan stopped and let out a long breath. He used his sleeve to wipe away the sweat on his forehead. He raised his head and looked at Jiang Tianyi. Seeing that Jiang Tianyi wasn't done yet, he smiled smugly. Ha ha ha. Jiang Tianyi, oh Jiang Tianyi, I thought you were very capable. I didn't expect you to be so arrogant with just this little bit of skill. Chen Lan laughed smugly and mocked Jiang Tianyi mercilessly. Jiang Tianyi was already very anxious, and when he heard Chen Lan's cold laughter, he became even more anxious and his expression turned ugly. However, he wasn't distracted by Chen Lan. He pursed his lips and continued with the finishing touches. Although he had already lost, he couldn't give up halfway. He still had to complete the forging. Moreover, he still had a glimmer of hope. Perhaps the divine sword he forged would be more successful and perfect than Chen Lan's? Jiang Tiansheng was also dejected. His eyes were filled with disappointment as he muttered to himself, "How can this be? Seventh brother's skill in forging is in the top 3 among us 9 brothers. Wonderful book house." Chapter 3473. Jiang Tiansheng could not accept this result. He even thought that losing to Chen Lan meant that he could only withdraw from the competition for the blacksmithing genius. "I can't accept this. I was the one who found these 2 blacksmithing geniuses first." Jiang Tiansheng roared in his heart. He clenched his fists so tightly that the veins on the back of his hands popped out. On the other side, Uncle Yan puffed out his chest with a proud smile on his face. Lin Zhan and Zhang Longxiang had different expressions. Zhang Longxiang frowned, clearly surprised and disappointed. However, Lin Zhan raised his brows, his eyes filled with anticipation and joy. Chen Lan was not in a hurry to open the cauldron lid. He continued to mock Jiang Tianyi and harassed him with words to buy time. Fortunately, Jiang Tianyi had strong willpower and turned a deaf ear to his words. After another quarter of an hour, Jiang Tianyi finally completed the forging of the divine sword. When he stopped, Chen Lan sneered contemptuously, "You've already lost and you're still putting on airs?" Jiang Tianyi said expressionlessly, "As a blacksmith and a divine blacksmith, the most basic requirement is to never give up on a piece of work easily. This is a form of respect for the materials and oneself. A loss is a loss. Why are you still so stubborn?" Chen Lan pursed his lips in disdain and sneered, "You were 15 minutes slower than me. That's enough to see the difference in strength." Jiang Tianyi did not bicker with him. He said coldly, "You can't make a conclusion without seeing the divine sword. All right, I'll make you give up then." Chen Lan smiled disdainfully and opened the cauldron lid. Swoosh! A golden arc flew out of the cauldron and lit up with a dazzling golden light. It was like the sun hanging in the sky, illuminating the entire hall. Everyone's eyes were focused on the golden arc. They saw a golden divine sword about 3 feet long and 2 inches wide floating in the air. The sword was dignified and holy. It looked like a swimming dragon and the sword light was dense and hazy. It was definitely the best among the low-grade king-level divine weapons. Uncle Yan was the first to clap and cheer. Young Master Lan is extremely talented and his blacksmithing skills have reached perfection. This sword is of the best quality. Lin Zhan also cheered and said excitedly, "Good sword. What a peerless sword." Although the battle dragonesque elephant did not say anything, its eyes were burning. It was obvious that it approved and was excited. Chen Lan laughed heartily. "Ha ha ha. Jiang Tianyi, did you see that clearly? Learn from him. However, I feel that you won't be able to learn it at all." Jiang Tiansheng curled his lips angrily and said, "What are you so proud of? Seventh brother's divine weapon hasn't shown up yet." As his voice fell, Jiang Tianyi waved his hand and opened the lid. Swish! A streak of scarlet light soared into the sky, bringing with it a fearful sword radiance. It was like a bloody sun in the sky, illuminating the entire hall red. Within the blood-red light was a broadsword that was about 5 feet long and as wide as a palm. It was emitting a heavy and sacred pressure. This sword wasn't as dignified and divine as Chen Lan's golden sword. It was more like a sword of slaughter that could split the heavens and the earth apart. It was filled with an iron-blooded domineering aura, and a might that looked down upon all living beings. If Chen Lan's work was described as a monarch sword, then Jiang Tianyi's divine sword would be an overlord's sword. Without a doubt, this sword was also a top-grade low-grade king-grade god artifact. Jiang Tiansheng was the first to applaud. He shouted, "Did you see that? Seventh brother's divine sword is even more powerful and domineering than yours. Your sword is a woman's sword. Seventh brother's bloody slaughter divine sword is a real man's weapon. Chun Lan's expression didn't look too good as he glared at Jiang Tianxing. Uncle Yin was silent and didn't comment. He was also someone who knew his stuff. Of course, he knew that both swords were top grade. It was hard to tell which was better. Lin Jun frowned and didn't say anything. He had to admit that the bloody slaughter divine sword was very impressive. On the other hand, Zhang Longxiang's face was filled with excitement and admiration. His face was flushed red. He didn't say anything, but he was screaming in his heart, "What a peerless divine weapon! This is the sword that I've been dreaming of." The hall fell into a short period of silence. Chun Lan frowned and said, "Jiang Tianyi, everyone's eyes are clear. I'll be fair and objective and say that the bloody slaughter divine sword you refined is also a top-grade weapon. In terms of divine sword quality, you and I are tied. However, you were 15 minutes slower than me. That's the truth. Therefore you still lost." Jiang Tianyi couldn't refute and could only silently put away the bloody slaughter divine sword and divine furnace. But Jiang Tianxing was very unconvinced. He still wanted to quibble but didn't know what to say. The first round ended just like that. Chun Lan looked askance at Jiang Tianyi and said with a cold smile, "How is it? You're not convinced of your loss, right? Want another round? Anyway, it's decided in 3 rounds. You still have 2 chances." Chun Lan was very cunning. Although he had just refined an artifact and used up a lot of divine power, if they continued to compete, his speed would definitely decrease several times. However, Jiang Tianyi was the same as him. His strength and foundation were inferior to his, and his speed would be even slower. If they continued to compete in the second round, Jiang Tianyi would still lose to him. And he would lose even more miserably. Best of 3. Chapter 3474. Previously, Chun Lan and Uncle Yen had suspected Ji Tianxing's identity. However, he kept a low profile and did not attract any attention. Hence, the two of them did not pay much attention to him. However, it was different now. Jiang Tianyi had lost the first round, but he wanted to invite Ji Tianxing to participate in the second round. Moreover, Jiang Tianyi was very respectful towards Ji Tianxing, as if he was facing an elder. However, there was no such young human among the elders, protectors, and leaders of the Jiang clan. How could Chun Lan and Uncle Yen not be suspicious? Faced with the two's questioning, Jiang Tianyi frowned and hesitated whether to reveal Ji Tianxing's true identity. At this moment, Ji Tianxing looked at Uncle Yen with a smile and mocked, "Yen Shanggao, it's been 1,000 years and you haven't improved at all. Oh right, is your illegitimate son still alive? Don't tell me you've decided to kill him for justice?" He paused for a while and muttered to himself, "However, with your character, you'll probably kill your illegitimate son to protect yourself. After all, your wife is a direct descendant of the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect. If you want to hug the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect's thigh, you have to show your determination." Upon hearing this, Uncle Yen, who was still domineering just a moment ago, froze. He looked as if he had seen a ghost. His expression was extremely ugly. His eyes were wide open as he stared fixedly at Ji Tianxing. His eyes were filled with fear. Who are you? Don't slander me and tarnish my reputation." Uncle Yen was shocked, but he still maintained his rationality and quickly denied it. However, his reaction had already betrayed him. Everyone knew that Ji Tianxing was right. Even Chun Lan was stunned. She looked at Uncle Yen with a strange look in her eyes. Seeing Chun Lan's reaction, Ji Tianxing ignored Uncle Yen and said to Chun Lan, "Second brother Chun, it seems like you don't know Yen Shanggao well. This old man used to be the guard commander of the treasury, and was a person of high status. However, 1,000 years ago, the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect suddenly announced that he would be stripped of his position and demoted to your housekeeper and guard. Don't you understand what's going on? Maybe you're still feeling complacent and think that the sect thinks highly of you, so you did it on purpose, right?" Chun Lan was at a loss for words. She wanted to retort, but she couldn't. Uncle Yan's expression turned even uglier. His eyes were as sharp as swords as he glared at Ji Tianxing. In a low voice he asked, "Boy, who are you?" Ji Tianqing smiled contemptuously and said in an indifferent tone, Yan Shangao, not to mention you, even if your sect leader Su Bai Lian was here, he wouldn't dare to be impudent in front of this king. There are 800 outer disciples, 200 inner disciples, 9 elite disciples, 12 elders, the left and right protectors, the sect leader, and the vice-sect leader. I know all of them like the back of my hand. Can you guess who this prince is? In terms of seniority, both of you should address this prince as Old Master. Chun Lan and Uncle Yen were dumbfounded. They stared at him with their mouths agape. Their first reaction was disbelief. Not only was this human young man young, but he was also a nobody. How could he have such a high seniority? Chun Lan and Uncle Yen were furious. They felt that the other party was bluffing and even humiliating them. However, both of them suppressed their anger and didn't dare to be impudent. After all, Ji Tianqing's tone was calm and confident. It was as if he was telling the truth. He wasn't pretending. Moreover, he knew the situation of the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect very well. His words were clear and logical. He even dared to call the sect leader of the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect by his name. In an instant, Chun Lan and Uncle Yen were stunned. They couldn't tell if it was true or false. The two of them looked at each other and discussed secretly through voice transmission. Uncle Yen, can you guess who this boy is? Is there such a human young man among the seniors who have dealings with our sect? Chun Lan, don't be fooled by him. This boy is so young. How can he be a senior? Uncle Yen, to us Divine King powerhouses, maintaining a youthful appearance isn't anything difficult. Moreover, there are many old monsters who have lived for tens of thousands of years, who like to disguise themselves as handsome young men. This guy doesn't look like he's lying. If he really is a senior, won't we offend him? Chun Lan was obviously stunned and didn't dare to act rashly. However, Uncle Yen shook his head secretly and objected. I feel that the probability of this is not high. What if he's pretending and we're still fooled? Won't that be embarrassing? Chun Lan frowned and said in a low voice, Uncle Yen, he knows the situation of our sect like the back of his hand. Also, what he said about you just now, is it true? Uncle Yan's expression was very awkward. He turned his head and said, Young Master Lan, can we not talk about this? Chun Lan spread out his hands and said, Then it's true? Since that's the case, we'd rather believe it's true than not. Anyway, we're only competing with him in weapon refinement. We won't fight to the death. No matter if he's real or fake, we won't lose anything if we don't harp on this question. Uncle Yen remained silent, which was a tacit agreement. At this time, Ji Tianqing looked at Chun Lan with a smile that didn't look like a smile. He asked, Are the two of you done muttering? Who still has objections to my identity? Uncle Yen remained silent and glared at him angrily. Chun Lan wanted to ask who Ji Tianqing was, but Ji Tianqing's words made his body tense up and his hair stand on end. 1,125 years ago, 3 disciples of the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect entered the mysterious nether cave to explore. You were one of them, right? 2 of them died and only you came out alive. Have you found out the cause of their deaths? Although Ji Tianqing seemed to be asking casually, a cold smile appeared on his face. However, there was a cold smile on his lips as he stared at Chun Lan with a meaningful look in his eyes. That deep and cold gaze seemed to be able to see through people's hearts. Chun Lan's heart clenched and cold sweat broke out on his back. Even his expression was a little stiff. Others didn't know the truth, but he was well aware. He was the one who caused the death of one of the disciples. In order to cover up the truth, he killed the other disciple. After escaping the mysterious nether cave, he lied that the 2 disciples were attacked by ferocious beasts, and that he had risked his life to escape. The 100 Refinement Ancient Sect investigated for a period of time, but nothing was found. Everyone had forgotten about this matter, and Chun Lan had also thrown it to the back of his mind. Now that Ji Tianqing mentioned it, it seemed like he was reminding him of something. Chun Lan immediately became vigilant and fearful. He was afraid that he would expose himself, so he quickly smiled and said, Young Master Tianqing, you must be joking. The sect has already investigated this matter. Ji Tianqing didn't pursue the matter. He smiled and said, Can we start the second round now? Chun Lan secretly sighed in relief and quickly nodded. Yes, of course. Ji Tianqing looked at him from the corner of his eyes and sneered. You seem to be very guilty. Could it be that paper can't wrap fire and you've exposed yourself? Chun Lan's nerves, which had just relaxed, instantly tensed up again. Her heart thumped. When he saw Uncle Yan's doubtful and scrutinizing gaze, his mind went blank. He stopped breathing and his limbs turned cold. Chapter 3475. At that moment, Chun Lan was truly scared out of his wits. The rules of the 100 Refinements ancient sect were very strict. Once the sect found out that he had harmed a fellow disciple, only death awaited him. Furthermore, the disciples of the sect could expose each other. For example, if Uncle Yan exposed this matter to the sect, he would be rewarded greatly. Perhaps his punishment would be revoked, and he would be able to return to guard the treasury and be the leader of the guards. That was why Chun Lan was so terrified. Fortunately, Ji Tianqing waved his hand and smiled. I was just joking with you. Look at how scared you are. Only then did Chun Lan feel as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. Her suspended heart finally settled back into her stomach, and her soul that had flown out of the heavens returned to her body. He forced an ugly smile on his pale face and said in a hoarse voice, Young Master Tianqing, you can't joke about this. It'll kill someone. Uncle Yan retracted his suspicious gaze and remained silent. Ji Tianqing sat down cross-legged and took out the 9 heavens cauldron. All right, let's not waste any more time. Let's start the competition. Which one of you will fight? Chun Lan secretly wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and pointed at Uncle Yan. He will fight. I need to rest for a few days. He will fight this round. Uncle Yan was prepared for this, so he wasn't surprised. However, he frowned and looked at Chun Lan. Young Master Lan, I'm not a direct disciple of the sect. My skills in refining weapons are very ordinary. I can't compare to you. This guy's background is mysterious, so his skills must be extraordinary. His skills in refining weapons must be superb. If I fight him, I'll most likely lose. Chun Lan didn't panic and replied calmly, Uncle Yan, don't worry. This is just a temporary measure. Don't forget, we'll win 2 out of 3 rounds. I've already won 1 round, so it's fine even if you lose to him. In the 3rd round, it'll still be me versus Zhang Tianyi. They'll definitely lose. Uncle Yan was stunned for a moment before he reacted. He nodded in agreement. That's right. This guy needs to rest after the competition. Zhang Tianyi will fight the 3rd round. Thinking of this, he calmed down and no longer felt pressured. All right, I'll fight you in the 2nd round. Uncle Yan regained his dignified aura and walked to the center of the hall. He was 100 meters away from Ji Tianqing. He took out a king-level divine cauldron and sat cross-legged on the ground. Young Master Tianqing, you think too highly of yourself. You even consider yourself our senior. Then this old man would like to see if your attainments and strength in refining artifacts are as big as your words. Ji Tianqing looked at him with a smile and said lightly, You're just cannon fodder. Don't give yourself more drama. Uncle Yan's face turned red, but he couldn't say a single word of rebuttal. Zhang Tianyi and Zhang Tianqing both held their stomachs and laughed out loud. Even Lin Zhan and Zhan Longxiang smiled. The atmosphere in the main hall was finally not so oppressive anymore. Soon the competition between Ji Tianqing and Uncle Yan began. The two of them activated the array formation in the divine cauldron, and began to adjust the divine flames and the temperature in the cauldron to prepare for the refinement. An hour later, the preparations were complete. The two of them took out the materials and added them into the cauldron. The competition was still about refining a king-level low-grade divine artifact. Uncle Yan took out 10 sets of materials to refine a divine sword. Ji Tianqing took out 8 sets of materials to refine a divine armor. Chan Lan, Zhang Tiansheng, and the others were shocked when they saw the materials used by the two of them. They were filled with doubt. That's a king-level low-grade divine artifact. He needs at least 9 sets of materials to succeed. He only used 8 sets? Even Lin Zhan and Zhan Longxiang looked at Ji Tianqing in a different light. They were looking forward to it. He wants to refine a king-level divine artifact with only 8 sets of materials? It seems like this Tianqing has a special refining technique that's better than Qianlan and Jiang Tianyi's. Out of everyone present, only Jiang Tianyi had a smile on his face. He was already used to it. After that, Ji Tianqing and Uncle Yan both focused on casting their spells and forging tools. Uncle Yan gave it his all. He was especially serious and focused. His nerves were tense. Although he was cannon fodder, Qianlan expected him to lose. But he wanted to prove himself and give it his all. If he beat Ji Tianqing, not only would he be proud, but he would also win the competition and force the Jiang clan out of the competition. Then he would have made a contribution. On the other hand, Ji Tianqing's expression was calm and indifferent. There was a sense of leisure in his concentration. It was as if he wasn't refining artifacts, completing a mission, or competing with others. It was as if he was drinking tea, admiring the moon and appreciating paintings. His mental state was relaxed. But his hand movements were as smooth as flowing water. It was too fast for the eyes to take in, and it was accurate. He used different methods in the early, middle, and late stages of refining the divine armor. They were all refining techniques that no one had ever heard of before. They were mysterious and profound. Qianlan, Jiang Tianyi, Jiang Tiansheng, Lin Zhen, and Zhang Longxiang stared at him. Their eyes were filled with amazement and admiration. Especially Zhang Longxiang. His eyes were burning, and his heart was filled with adoration. Time passed quickly and no one noticed. Unknowingly, 7 days had passed. Ji Tianqing finally finished his refinement and stopped his work. His expression was still calm, and there wasn't even a bead of sweat on his forehead. He looked especially relaxed. After he finished refining, he didn't say anything. He just sat on the spot and closed his eyes, waiting silently. The ninth heaven cauldron that was spinning quickly also stopped. It floated motionlessly. Seeing him do that, Jiang Tianyi, Jiang Tiansheng, Lin Zhen, and Zhang Longxiang all looked at Qianlan. Qianlan was embarrassed. He was too ashamed to show his face. After all, he was very proud of himself after refining the artifact. He even mocked and harassed Jiang Tianyi. Compared to Ji Tianqing's actions, he was a despicable person. Ji Tianqing had the demeanor of a grandmaster and the bearing of a divine blacksmith. Embarrassed by everyone's gazes, Qianlan could only change the topic. He pursed his lips and said, "So what if his refining techniques are fancy? Didn't he use 7 days just like me? Even if he were to compete with me, we would only be able to tie." No one said anything. They couldn't refute him. After that, the crowd waited for another 12 hours before Uncle Yan finally completed the refinement. Phew! After he stopped, Uncle Yan let out a sigh of relief. He wiped the sweat off his forehead with his sleeve. His face was a little pale and he looked a little tired. He said to Qianlan, "Young Master Lan, I didn't let you down. I've finished refining." Qianlan forced a smile. "Uncle Yan, you've worked hard. However, young Master Tianqing finished refining 12 hours ago." Uncle Yan was stunned. He said dejectedly, "I didn't expect that I would still lose after giving it my all." Qianlan hurriedly comforted him. "Don't worry. Let's wait until everyone sees your work. Perhaps your artifact will be more exquisite than his?" Uncle Yan nodded and opened the cauldron lid. Wonderful book house. Chapter 3476. Swoosh! The lid of the cauldron opened, and a white rainbow flew into the air. A 4-foot-long sword was wrapped in the dazzling white rainbow. The sword was blazing white and had a dignified appearance. It rippled with a vigorous divine power aura. It contained 100 types of divine Tao laws and 1,000 types of divine formations and restrictions. Compared to Qianlan and Jiang Tianyi's works, this sword could only be considered average and not outstanding. Qianlan was a little disappointed. He had already guessed the outcome. However, he still had a trace of hope and hope. He looked at Ji Tianqing and said, "Young Master Tianqing, it's your turn." Ji Tianqing did not waste any time. He waved his hand and opened the lid of the 9 heavens cauldron. Swoosh! A dazzling icy blue divine light bloomed from the cauldron and slowly rose into the air. The entire hall was illuminated with an icy blue color. It was like a palace of ice and snow. Following the appearance of an exquisite and gorgeous divine armor, the entire hall turned into a hall of extreme cold. Frost formed everywhere. Everyone ignored the bone-piercing cold. They stared at the icy blue armor and observed it carefully. This divine armor is too beautiful. This should be for a woman to wear, right? Jiang Tianxing exclaimed from the bottom of his heart. It's so exquisite and gorgeous. The patterns on the armor are also original. It's really admirable. Lin Zhan and Zhang Longxiang were excited. Their expressions were filled with admiration and worship. Even Chen Lan had to admit that this divine armor was indeed a divine item. It was a 1 in 1,000 masterpiece. Jiang Tianyi observed it carefully for a while before saying, "It's really a low-grade king-grade divine artifact. And it's a supreme-grade one. Whether it's the difficulty of refining or the quality, it far surpasses the bloody slaughter sword that I refined and the sword that Chen Lan refined." Jiang Tianyi was sincerely impressed. However, before he could finish, Chen Lan said indignantly, "I don't deny that it surpasses your bloody slaughter sword. However, it surpasses my divine sword? Are you sure?" Jiang Tianyi turned to look at him and nodded expressionlessly. "I'm very sure. First of all, refining an armor is more complicated and time-consuming than a divine sword. Secondly, young Master Tianqing only used 8 sets of materials. You used 9 sets. This is enough to prove that young Master Tianqing's attainments in refining artifacts are superior to yours. Most importantly, take a closer look at this divine armor. How many laws and restrictions does it contain?" Chen Lan was stunned. She looked at the ice-blue divine armor again and observed it carefully. After a short moment, his figure shook while his expression stiffened, and he couldn't help but exclaim with shock. 130 divine crests of the laws? More than 1,300 restrictions? Oh my God! It's only been 7 days, how could he? Chen Lan was completely dumbfounded. He was so shocked that his blood was boiling and his entire body was burning. At this moment, winning or losing was no longer important. He just wanted to know how Ji Tianqing did it. Lin Zhan and Zhang Longxiang were also stunned. They looked at Ji Tianqing with eyes full of respect and admiration. The hall fell into silence. Uncle Yen put away the divine cauldron and divine sword. He broke the silence and said in a low voice, "We have lost the second round." His words woke everyone up. Only then did Chen Lan come back to his senses. He regained his confidence and composure and grinned. "Haha, even if young Master Tianqing won, it's nothing. It's all within my expectations anyway. Now that we are tied, we have to wait for the third round to determine the winner." With that said, Chen Lan looked at Jiang Tianyi provocatively and curled his finger. "Jiang Tianyi, my divine power and condition have both recovered to their peak. You can admit defeat in advance." Jiang Tianyi immediately frowned, and his expression became serious. "That's right. So what if Ji Tianqing won the first round? He still had to go up for the third round and have a final battle with Chen Lan. He had only recovered 90% and was not at his peak condition. It was very, very difficult to win against Chen Lan." Jiang Tianyi was originally very happy, but when he thought of this problem, he became depressed. Lin Zhan and Zhang Longxiang also looked at Jiang Tianyi, waiting for him to make a decision. Should he compete with Chen Lan and lose? Or should he save his energy and time and admit defeat directly? Just as everyone was waiting for Jiang Tianyi to make a decision, a calm voice sounded. "The third round will still be mine." Everyone was stunned for a moment and turned their heads. Without a doubt, the person who spoke was Ji Tianqing. Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianyi both frowned and asked worriedly, "Young Master Tianqing, aren't you going to rest for a few days?" Although the two of them said the same thing, their thoughts were different. Jiang Tianyi was worried that Ji Tianqing's continuous forging of divine weapons would damage his foundation of the divine path. Jiang Tianyi, on the other hand, was worried that Ji Tianqing would lose to Chen Lan due to his lack of strength in the third round. Chen Lan raised his eyebrows and asked with a playful smile, "Young Master Tianqing, your forging skills are indeed extraordinary. However, you have just finished forging a divine weapon. Are you sure you want to continue? Don't say that I took advantage of you by not letting you rest and recuperate. You asked for it yourself." Clearly, Chen Lan was not worried about losing at all. If Jiang Tianyi participated in the third round, he would definitely lose. If Ji Tianqing continued, he would not have much chance of winning in a situation where he did not have enough divine power and was mentally exhausted. No matter what, Chunlan was sure to win. Ji Tianqing glanced at him and said indifferently, "It's only been 7 days. I didn't use much divine power. Do I still need to rest and recuperate?" Chunlan choked on her words and said in exasperation, "Fine. Since you are so confident, let's wait and see." Jiang Tianyi wanted to persuade Ji Tianqing but was stopped by Jiang Tianyi. He transmitted his voice to Jiang Tianyi, "Ninth brother, young Master Tianqing's strength and methods are far beyond our imagination. Since he is so confident, we will definitely win." Jiang Tianyi was skeptical. After hesitating for a long time, he finally acquiesced. On the other side, Uncle Yen reminded Chunlan, "Young Master Lan, that kid's forging skills are so shocking. You must not let your guard down." Chunlan nodded to show that he understood and said with a smile, "If I had competed with him just now, I would definitely have lost. His forging skills are indeed brilliant. However, he has just finished forging a divine weapon. His divine power must be empty and his mind exhausted. I, on the other hand, am in peak condition. Why should I be afraid of losing to him?" Uncle Yin was speechless. He could only remind him, "In any case, young Master Lan, you must give it your all." "All right, I understand." Chunlan waved his hand and walked to the main hall to sit down. He took out the divine cauldron and looked at Ji Tianqing opposite him. "Shall we begin?" Ji Tianqing raised his hand and said, "Wait. This third round will determine the winner. If we compete like this, it will be too monotonous." Chunlan frowned. "What? You know that your divine power is insufficient and want to change the rules?" Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "It's boring to just forge a low-grade king-level divine weapon. Why don't we upgrade the divine weapon we just forged to mid-grade?" "Upgrade a low-grade divine weapon?" Chunlan frowned and pondered seriously. After weighing the pros and cons, he gritted his teeth and made a decision. "Fine." Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "Why don't we add some stakes? Otherwise, it will be boring for everyone to watch." Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 3477. Ji Tianqing's words made Chunlan fall silent. Uncle Yen was filled with anxiety. He hurriedly sent a voice transmission to remind him, "Young Master Lan, be careful of that guy's tricks. Both are low-grade king-grade divine artifacts, but the divine armor he made has 30 more runes than your divine sword. If the two of you compete like this, he can save nearly a day of time compared to you. Moreover, you haven't made many mid-grade king-grade divine artifacts. I'm afraid you don't have enough experience." Before Uncle Yen could finish, Chunlan waved his hand and interrupted him. "Uncle Yen, not only have I helped my master and a few elders to make mid-grade king-grade divine artifacts 7 times, but I've also made them 3 times. And all of them were successful. If we're talking about experience, I'm quite confident. However, his divine armor has 130 runes, so it can save a lot of time." Seeing that he had listened to his advice, Uncle Yen didn't say anything else. Chunlan looked at Ji Tianqing and asked, "What do you want to bet with me?" Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "Of course I want to bet some valuables, such as precious treasures or divine artifacts. Do you dare?" Chunlan sneered and said, "Why wouldn't I dare? Tell me, what treasures do you want to bet?" Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "Your master is the left protector of the 100 Refinements ancient sect. I remember that he found a great opportunity on a star when he was exploring the universe. He dug up a huge piece of primordial jade essence, which is a treasure that has been growing for 100,000 years. Not only can it be used to heal injuries, forge weapons, and refine pills, but it can also be refined to increase one's strength. He seems to have divided the primordial jade essence into a few portions. He gave one to the 100 Refinements ancient sect, refined one for himself, and kept a few for himself. If I'm not wrong, you're the disciple he's most proud of, so he should have given you a portion, right?" Hearing this, Chunlan was instantly on guard, and his eyes were filled with caution. "How do you know all this? You're actually thinking about Master's primordial jade essence?" Chunlan exclaimed. This matter was extremely secretive. Even within the 100 Refinements ancient sect, not many people knew about it. 200 years ago, Chen Lan had made a great contribution and brought glory to his master. That was why his master had secretly rewarded him with a primordial jade marrow. From then on, he learned of the origin and effects of the primordial chalcedony. It grew in the depths of the earth's core. Even though it was nurtured within a divine jade mine, it was like fine nectar that could be directly consumed and refined. After obtaining the primordial chalcedony, Chen Lan had wanted to refine it to increase her cultivation. However, the left protector had repeatedly warned him that he had to wait until he reached the peak of the 6th degree realm and break through the shackles of the high-level divine king before using it. This way, he would have even greater hopes of becoming a high divine king. That was why Chen Lan had kept the primordial jade quintessence all this while, and had not refined it yet. However, he did not expect that Ji Tianqing would actually guess that he had this item and even wanted to use it as a wager. Without any hesitation, Chen Lan rejected him decisively. "No, I will never use it as a wager. Don't even think about it." With regards to his reaction, Ji Tianqing was not surprised at all. He merely smiled and said, "Why? The competition hasn't even started and you already think that you will lose? If that's the case, you might as well admit defeat and leave Changle City." "How can I admit defeat?" Of course, Chen Lan was not convinced, but he would not be provoked. "However, I will not use the primordial chalcedony as a wager. You can give up now." "Haha, is that so?" Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and said in a playful tone, "Since you want to bet, of course it has to be fair. My wager is as valuable as the primordial chalcedony. Don't you want to know what it is?" What else can be as valuable as the primordial chalcedony? Chen Lan naturally did not believe him. He frowned and stared at Ji Tianqing. Uncle Yan also revealed a curious and doubtful expression, as he waited for Ji Tianqing's reply. Ji Tianqing looked at the two of them and said with a playful smile, "The 100 Smelting Ancient Sect was founded more than 37,000 years ago by a peerless divine blacksmith Lian Qianqiu. At that time, Lian Qianqiu was only obsessed with researching and crafting divine weapons. He did not have time to care about worldly affairs. In order to craft a peerless divine weapon, he spent thousands of years of effort and traveled across the universe. He searched every corner of the divine world and almost died. He was a true blacksmithing maniac and a lunatic for researching divine weapons. Fortunately, he had 4 successful disciples who used his name to create the 100 Smelting Ancient Sect. After 3,000 years of development, the sect occupied a paradise and transcended the worldly affairs. It was with the power of the sect that Lian Qianqiu was able to gather the 2 sets of materials that he desperately needed. In the end, he successfully crafted a king-grade divine weapon, the 100 Smelting Divine Hammer. Uncle Yan and Chen Lan were not unfamiliar with the legend of the 100 Smelting Ancient Sect's founding ancestor. However, after listening to Ji Tianqing's story, the two of them were not annoyed. Instead, they were filled with pride. However, when they heard the words 100 Smelting Divine Hammer, their expressions turned cold and their eyes dimmed. Ji Tianqing continued, "Although Lian Qianqiu did not change his ways of being a blacksmith maniac, and went to the universe to search for special materials, unfortunately, he died in a black hole. However, the 100 Smelting Divine Hammer is indeed a peerless divine weapon. It has protected the 100 Smelting Ancient Sect for more than 30,000 years. It's a pity that the 100 Smelting Divine Hammer was destroyed during the War of the Gods 1,000 years ago. It turned into dust and scattered in the void. Until now, the 100 Smelting Ancient Sect has not been able to craft a similar divine hammer. This should be the 100 Smelting Ancient Sect's greatest wish, right?" Chen Lan and Uncle Yan both furrowed their brows and nodded with solemn and serious expressions. "You're right. This is indeed our sect's greatest regret." "What are you trying to say? Don't tell us that you can craft a 100 Smelting Divine Hammer. That would be a joke." Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said, "Although I can craft a 100 Smelting Divine Hammer, I don't have the time to spend thousands of years searching for materials." Uncle Yan and Chen Lan could tell that something was amiss. Their expressions changed and their hearts jumped to their throats. "What do you mean? You can craft 100 smelting divine hammer? That's impossible. Ji Tianqing said calmly, if I'm not wrong, the 100 smelting ancient sect has prepared all the materials to craft a divine hammer. Unfortunately, the only thing you lack is the blueprint of the divine hammer. The 100 smelting divine hammer is extremely complicated and exquisite. None of you can see through it and no one can remember it. Naturally, you won't be able to craft it. After saying that, Ji Tianqing circulated his divine force, and a ball of golden light the size of an egg flew out from his forehead. The dense golden light contained a vast amount of information. It was mysterious and profound. Ji Tianqing held the golden light in his hand and looked at Qianlan with a smile. He said, coincidentally, I know the blueprint of the 100 smelting divine hammer. Qianlan, which one is more precious, the blueprint of the 100 smelting divine hammer, or your primordial jade essence? Hearing this, Qianlan was so excited that his blood boiled. He stared at the golden light with a burning gaze and could not help but swallow his saliva. Is there a need to ask? Even 10 primordial jade essences cannot compare to the blueprint of the 100 smelting divine hammer. Chapter 3478. Qianlan was exaggerating. However, this was also within reason. To the 100 refinement ancient sect, the primordial jade marrow was just a precious treasure. However, the 100 refinement divine hammer was different. It was the totem of the 100 refinement ancient sect, the divine weapon of the sect. It was the pride and reliance of all the disciples of the 100 refinement ancient sect. Ji Tianqing's words made Qianlan's blood boil. He was filled with excitement and anticipation. He wanted to take out the primordial jade marrow and exchange it for the blueprint of the divine hammer in Ji Tianqing's hands. However, that was impossible. Uncle Yan was also excited, but he was able to maintain his calm. Wait! He suddenly shouted coldly, interrupting Qianlan's fantasy. Young Master Tianqing, no one in the sect knows about the structure of the 100 refinement divine hammer. How could an outsider like you know about it? Also, who can prove that the blueprint in your hands is real? Qianlan finally snapped out of his daze. He quickly nodded and asked, that's right. You can't just take out something and lie to me that it's the blueprint of the 100 refinement divine hammer. You're taking this too lightly. Ji Tianqing smiled and said proudly, you'll know if it's real or fake when you see it. As he spoke, he waved his right hand and a golden ball of light appeared in front of Qianlan. Qianlan was stunned. He did not take the golden ball of light. Instead, he asked Ji Tianqing, if this is really the blueprint of the divine hammer, aren't you afraid that we'll memorize it? Ji Tianqing smiled and said, take a look. If you two can understand it within 3 days, I'll admit defeat. As for memorizing it, don't even think about it. Even if everyone in the 100 refinement ancient sect came to see it, they wouldn't be able to memorize it. The most special thing about the 100 refinement divine hammer is that other than Lian Qianqiu, no one else can memorize its blueprint. Qianlan was shocked into a daze, and a deep sense of reverence grew in her heart. Uncle Yan frowned and refuted, other than our sect's founder, no one else can memorize the blueprint. How can you memorize it? Doesn't this mean that your blueprint is fake? Ji Tianqing couldn't help but roll his eyes. Yan Shigao, with your IQ, it's hard for us to communicate. I didn't memorize this blueprint by memory. This time Uncle Yan understood. He said, you mean you have a blueprint of the hammer and you're copying it for us? Ji Tianqing just smiled and didn't want to bother with him anymore. Qianlan could not wait any longer. She extended her trembling hands and held the golden ball of light. She used her divine sense to read the information within. Instantly, his mind was flooded with information that was as deep as the ocean. It was to the extent that his entire body froze on the spot. It was as if he had fallen asleep and almost lost consciousness. After a long time, he finally calmed his mind and no longer dared to read the information in the light ball. Huff huff huff. Qianlan held the ball of light in her hand as she panted heavily. Her face was somewhat pale. It's too scary. Who would remember such a vast amount of information? I only saw about 10% of it and my mind almost fainted. It's too scary. Seeing that, Qianlan couldn't help but exclaim. Uncle Yan looked expectant and eager to try. Jiang Tianyi, Jiang Tiansheng, Lin Zhan, Zhan Longxiang, and the others were also very interested. They were all shocked and expectant. They were all grandmasters and divine blacksmiths. They also wanted to see how mysterious and terrifying the blueprint of a peerless divine weapon was. Soon, Uncle Yen took the golden ball of light and immersed himself in it. When he took it, his reaction was even worse than Chen Lan's. After only 10 breaths, he felt dizzy and lost control of his mind. As if drunk, he stumbled and fell in the main hall. This is unbelievable. He quickly got up from the ground and exclaimed excitedly, "This is no ordinary divine weapon. It must be a peerless divine weapon. Although I only saw less than 10% of it, I dare say that only a top divine blacksmith can create such a divine weapon." At this moment, Uncle Yan's doubts were dispelled. He was completely convinced by the blueprint of the 100 smelting divine hammer. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and took the golden ball of light back into his hand. Chen Lan and Uncle Yen stared at the ball of light with reluctance. They really wanted to snatch it back. Ji Tianqing kept the golden ball of light and asked, "You've seen the blueprint. Chen Lan, do you want to bet or not?" This time Uncle Yen didn't have to say anything. Chen Lan nodded without hesitation. Yes, only a fool wouldn't bet. Although the primordial jade marrow was precious, it wasn't as important as the blueprint of the 100 smelting divine hammer. Chen Lan was already fantasizing that if he won the blueprint, he would become a hero of the 100 smelting ancient sect. At that time, he would definitely become the chief disciple. It was even possible that he would inherit the position of the sect leader in the future. The more he thought about it, the more excited he became. His face turned red. Uncle Yen didn't forget to remind him, "Young Master Lan, don't forget the time." Chen Lan immediately sobered up. He regained his composure and said to Ji Tianqing, "Young Master Tianqing, I agree to bet with you. However, to be fair, I have a request. Your divine armor already has 130 laws. My divine sword only has 100. Therefore, I want to start the refinement. You have to wait a day before you can continue. If you agree, we can start now." Jiang Tiansheng and Jiang Tianyi were filled with indignation. They immediately retorted, "Chen Lan, can you be any more shameless? Young Master Tianqing can inscribe 130 laws. That's his ability. Young Master Tianqing has already competed once. Now, you want to continue the competition. You want to lead by a day? How dare you say that?" Chen Lan also felt that he was going overboard. He wanted to change the time to 20 hours. However, before he could say anything, Ji Tianqing nodded in agreement. "All right, the rules are set then." "Good." Chen Lan was overjoyed. He quickly flattered, "Young Master Tianqing is indeed straightforward. You have the demeanor of a master." Since Ji Tianqing had agreed, Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianyi had nothing to say. They could only shut their mouths. The two of them were filled with worry. They could only pray silently, hoping that Ji Tianqing would win. Soon the competition began. Chen Lan was the first to open the divine cauldron. He placed the golden divine sword that he had previously refined into the cauldron, and prepared to inscribe laws and restrictions. Ji Tianqing sat in the main hall with his eyes closed. He waited patiently. An hour later, Chen Lan's divine sword had melted into a sword embryo. It was in a moldable state. He began to inscribe laws and restrictions. 2 hours later, he had inscribed a law and stacked over 100 divine arrays and restrictions. As time passed, he focused on casting the arts. He kept inscribing law and restriction after law. Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tiansheng became even more anxious when they saw that he was progressing rapidly. However, Ji Tianqing kept his eyes closed. He did not look at Chen Lan at all. He seemed especially calm. Chapter 3479. Unknowingly, a day passed. Ji Tianqing followed the agreement and opened his eyes. He took out the 9 heavens divine cauldron and started refining. At this time, Chen Lan had already engraved 27 laws and 270 array formations on his divine sword. Although compared to Ji Tianqing's divine armor, he was still short of 3 laws and 30 array formations. But he was filled with confidence and anticipation and did not feel worried at all. When Ji Tianqing started refining, He delayed for a breath of time and secretly took a look at Ji Tianqing. Unfortunately, Ji Tianqing was as calm and indifferent as ever. He could not see through him at all. Chen Lan thought to himself, this guy is still pretending to be deep. I still can't see through him. Ha ha ha, but no matter how well you pretend, it's useless. You'll be exposed very soon. Previously, you refined continuously for 7 days and only rested for a day in between. There's no way you can maintain your peak state. Next, we still have to engrave more than 170 laws. It'll take at least half a month's time. Let's see how you can persevere. These thoughts flashed through his mind. Chen Lan was no longer distracted and continued to focus on refining. The hall fell into silence. Ji Tianqing and Chen Lan were both immersed in refining without any distractions. Uncle Yan, Jiang Tianyi, Jiang Tiansheng, Lin Zhan, and Zhan Longxiang were all watching intently. No one made a sound, afraid that they would disturb Ji Tianqing and Chen Lan. Without a doubt, Ji Tianqing and Chen Lan were the two divine blacksmiths with the highest attainments in refining among them. In this competition, the two of them also gave it their all and brought out their trump cards. Everyone watched intently. While they were filled with amazement and admiration, they also broadened their horizons and learned a lot of experience in refining. Especially Lin Zhan and Zhan Longxiang. Their hearts were filled with agitation and excitement. To be able to watch two divine blacksmiths compete at close range was something that the two of them yearned for even in their dreams. Unknowingly, 3 days passed. Ji Tianqing and Chen Lan were still focused on refining, and did not slack off at all. But the further they went, the harder it was to refine. The speed also became slower. Chen Lan had engraved 184 laws and over 1,800 formation restrictions on the divine sword. This speed was already his limit, surpassing all his previous refinements. He was confident and proud. He couldn't help but glance at Ji Tianqing. He had thought that Ji Tianqing would definitely look tired and slow down his speed. But he was disappointed. Ji Tianqing was as calm as ever, without the slightest tiredness or sleepiness. His refining speed was as fast as ever. Of course, only Ji Tianqing himself knew that the Frost Moon divine armor he was refining already had 196 nomological laws. That's right, this godly armor was called Frozen Moon. A long time ago, he had planned to forge 2 divine swords and a set of divine armor for Yunyao. The dual swords of Sun and Moon had been completed a long time ago. He was going to take this opportunity to refine the Ice Moon divine armor. Unknowingly, 12 days had passed. Chen Lan's refining work was finally coming to an end. He had already engraved 290 nomological laws and 2,900 formation restrictions on the divine sword. In at most another 20 hours, the divine sword would become a mid-grade king-grade divine artifact. Such a fast speed was something Chen Lan had never thought of in the past. Unknowingly, he had already surpassed him. His refining attainments had improved again. He was proud and self-satisfied. He couldn't help but look at Ji Tianqing opposite him. However, when he saw Ji Tianqing across from him, he was dumbfounded on the spot and was stunned, because Ji Tianqing had just stopped and was casting spells. He raised his head and looked at him. Their eyes met. Ji Tianqing's expression was calm and indifferent. There was a hint of a smile at the corner of his mouth. But Chen Lan seemed to have been struck by lightning. His body stiffened and his mind went blank. He actually already completed it? At this moment, Chen Lan's heart was in a mess. He felt that everything was unreal. He couldn't believe it, much less accept it. Ji Tianqing had actually completed refining a mid-grade king-grade divine artifact. This couldn't be real. A deep sense of defeat filled Chen Lan's mind, causing his face to turn ashen. The confidence and pride that he was brimming with earlier vanished instantly, turning into disappointment and dejection. Right then, Uncle Yan reminded him with a voice transmission, "Young Master Lan, don't be in a daze. Continue casting your spells. Otherwise, the array formation will be messed up and the divine sword will collapse." Only then did Chen Lan snap out of his daze. He hurriedly suppressed his distracting thoughts and calmed himself down before continuing to refine his weapon. He muttered internally, "I haven't lost yet. I can't be distracted. No matter what, I have to refine this divine sword. Even if I lose to him, I can't embarrass myself, and I can't embarrass the sect." With that belief, Chun Lan entered a focused state and continued to refine his weapon without any distractions. Everyone in the hall had already seen the outcome and knew the answer. However, no one disturbed Chun Lan. They waited patiently for him to finish refining his weapon. Time seemed to have slowed down. After another 24 hours, Chun Lan was finally done with her artifact forging. His divine sword was successfully engraved with 300 nomological runes and 3,000 array formations. However, when he finished refining his weapon and stopped, there was only a sigh of relief. There was no joy at all. "It's over," he muttered to himself and raised his head to look at Ji Tianqing, who was in front of him. Ji Tianqing, who had been resting with his eyes closed, finally opened his eyes and said calmly, "Although the outcome is already decided, we still have to show off our results, right?" Chun Lan was depressed. He nodded stiffly and waved his hand to open the cauldron lid. Swoosh! Golden light flashed. The golden divine sword flew into the air and floated quietly, shining with dazzling divine light. The appearance of the divine sword did not change much. It was just that its divine power aura was sharper and more sacred. The number of nomological runes and restrictions within it had also tripled. It had successfully become a medium-grade king-level divine weapon. At that moment, Ji Tianqing also opened the cauldron lid. Swoosh! Ice-blue divine light flashed and a bone-chilling cold spread, freezing the entire hall once again. The ice moon divine armor flew into the air and floated quietly, shining with dazzling light. Compared to Chun Lan's divine sword, this divine armor was more beautiful, exquisite, and dazzling. Moreover, the divine armor's structure was more complicated. Its defense was stronger and it had all sorts of functions. Most importantly, the number of nomological laws contained within the armor was as many as 303. Without a doubt, Ji Tianqing had held back again. Not only did he spend 1 day less than Chun Lan, but he also engraved 3 more nomological runes. A complete victory. A complete victory without any suspense. At that moment, Jiang Tiansheng and Jiang Tianyi were cheering excitedly and clapping excitedly. Lin Zhan and Zhan Longxiang were also impressed. They clapped and cheered as they looked at Ji Tianqing with eyes full of respect and admiration. As for Chun Lan and Uncle Yan, their expressions were ugly and gloomy. They had lost the competition. Not only did they have to withdraw from the competition, but they also had to give up on the 2 blacksmithing geniuses. What made Chun Lan feel even more pained was that the primordial jade marrow that he had been saving to break through to an upper-level god king was about to change owners. Chapter 3480. Chun Lan had nothing to say about the results of the competition, even though he had defeated Jiang Tianyi in the first round. However, after Ji Tianqing joined the battle, he won both battles. Everyone had seen the competition with their own eyes, and they were full of admiration for Ji Tianqing's skills. Chun Lan had lost to Ji Tianqing, but he accepted it wholeheartedly and did not feel embarrassed. He could feel that the gap between him and Ji Tianqing was huge. However, this did not mean that he could accept the results. The blueprint of the 100 smelting divine hammer was extremely precious, and he and Uncle Yan had seen it with their own eyes. However, he regretted it now and hated that he had been blinded by the temptation. Only now did he understand why Ji Tianqing had used the blueprint, which was 10 times more precious than the primordial jade essence, as a bet. He was confident that he would win. From the start, he had fallen into Ji Tianqing's trap. However, the bait was too tempting, and he and Uncle Yan had no choice but to take the bait. When he thought about how the primordial jade essence, which was like his second life, was going to be given to Ji Tianqing, his heart ached and his breathing became hot. Soon the hall regained its silence. Ji Tianqing also kept the 9 heavens cauldron and ice moon divine armor, and looked at Chun Lan calmly. Without waiting for Ji Tianqing to speak, Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tiansheng said impatiently, "Chun Lan, our Jiang clan has won this competition. You have to withdraw from the competition between the 2 blacksmithing geniuses. Also, you have to accept your loss. Chun Lan, it's time for you to honor your bet." Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tiansheng's voices were filled with excitement and pride, and they looked at Chun Lan with sympathy. Chun Lan was ashamed and angry, but he could only endure it. With so many people watching, he could not go back on his words. After taking a deep breath and calming himself down, Chanlan said expressionlessly, I have lost. According to the agreement, I will leave Perpetual Joy City today. Furthermore, I will not take the initiative to invite the 2 blacksmithing geniuses to join the 100 Smelting Ancient Sect. However, those 2 geniuses are not willing to join the same sect, so you can only accept one at most. Do you think you have one? Haha. Naive. Hearing Chanlan's words, the smiles on Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianqing's faces froze. That's right. Although Chanlan wanted to withdraw from the competition, the Jiang clan could only recruit one artificer. It was very likely that the other genius would take the initiative to join the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect. Chanlan had only promised that she would not take the initiative to recruit any of them, but she had not promised to reject any of them. In the end, the 100 Refinements Ancient Sect still got the upper hand. Thinking of this, Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianqing's excitement instantly vanished. Seeing the 2 of them deflated and depressed, Chanlan revealed a smug sneer. He then turned to Ji Tianqing, cupped his fists and saluted, Young Master Tianqing. This king admires your attainments and skills in refining artifacts, and I accept my defeat wholeheartedly. However, the primordial chalcedony was too precious, so I didn't carry it with me. I've always left it in the sect. How about this, I'll go back to the sect and get it for you now. Chanlan lowered her head slightly, observing Ji Tianqing's reaction as she spoke. Ji Tianqing immediately frowned, and a cold smile appeared on his face. Jiang Tianqing's face was filled with anger as he shouted, Chanlan, are you trying to renege on your debt? This place is so far away from the 100 Refinements Ancient Sect, are you trying to buy time? Chanlan quickly waved his hands and smiled, you misunderstood. This king is upright, so how can I renege on my debt? If young Master Tianqing doesn't believe me, then follow me back to the sect to get it. Jiang Tianyi was also very dissatisfied, and he said coldly, Chanlan, don't play these tricks. Do you think we can't see through your thoughts? Ha ha ha. Chanlan sneered with disdain and shrugged helplessly. You're measuring the heart of a gentleman with your own mean measure. If you don't believe me, then there's nothing I can do. Uncle Yan also quickly chimed in and said righteously, Young Master Lan has already said that we won't renege on our debt. The primordial chalcedony will definitely be given to young Master Tianqing. However, young Master Lan didn't bring it with him, so he needs to go back to the sect to get it. How can you be so aggressive? You're shameless. Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tiansheng were speechless, and they could only suppress the anger in their hearts. They both suspected that the primordial chalcedony was on Chanlan, and that Chanlan was just trying to find an excuse to escape. However, without any evidence, they couldn't do anything to Chanlan. At this time, Ji Tianqing, who had been silent all this while, finally spoke. He looked at Chanlan calmly and said, How precious is the primordial chalcedony? You must treat it like your life, so how can you not bring it with you? You probably think that this king won't fall out with you and won't search or rob you. That's why you lied so brazenly, right? Having her thoughts exposed, Chanlan's body stiffened and her expression turned ugly. However, he immediately pretended to be angry and shouted righteously, Young Master Tianqing, even if this king respects you as a senior, you can't slander me and frame me for no reason. Everything I said is true. If you don't believe me, you can follow me back to the 100 Refinements Ancient Sect. Before he could finish, Ji Tianqing raised his hand and interrupted him. He said calmly, There's no need to go through so much trouble. As long as you set up an altar and swear to the heavens that you don't have the primordial chalcedony, if you go against your oath, you're willing to be struck by lightning until you're reduced to ashes. Your divine Tao will be destroyed and you'll never be reincarnated. As long as you do that, this king will believe you. How about that? Chanlan's face turned green, and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. He would never dare to swear to the heavens in such a solemn manner. After all, one couldn't simply swear an oath. The heavens would fulfill it. Seeing that Chanlan was speechless, Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tiansheng laughed mockingly and scolded him. Ha 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 ha. Chanlan, are you feeling guilty? You don't dare to swear to the heavens, do you? You're still saying that you're not going to go back on your word? To think that you were acting so well just now. I didn't expect you to be exposed so quickly. Lin Zhen and Zhang Longxiang watched from the side. They didn't have the right to interrupt. However, there was a subtle change in their expressions. Their impression of Chen Lan dropped even further. Actually, everyone already knew the answer in their hearts. Chen Lan was so embarrassed that he wanted to make an oath on the altar. However, Uncle Yan pulled him back and advised him, "Young Master Lan, don't be rash. You can't simply swear such an oath. It's very easy for it to come true. The price is too high." After saying that, he glared at Ji Tianqing and said coldly, "Young Master Tianqing, you're being so overbearing. Don't you think you're looking down on the 100 Refinements ancient sect? Furthermore, you're a senior expert. How can you make things difficult for a junior? You even forced young Master Lan to swear such a vicious oath?" Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "You're right. This king really doesn't care about the 100 Refinements ancient sect. Cut the crap. If you don't hand over the primordial jade essence today, don't even think about leaving the Gold Laurel Palace." Wonderful book house. Chapter 3481. It seems like you're determined to offend the 100 Refinements ancient sect, and not let us go? Chen Lan also flew into a rage out of humiliation. He glared fiercely at Ji Tianqing and asked in a deep voice. Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianqing sneered. "Hey, Chen Lan, you're really good at twisting the truth. You're the one who refused to honor your bet, and yet you're still trying to twist the truth? Chen Lan, I didn't expect you to be so shameless. Luckily, there are so many of us here. If you're determined to go back on your word, we'll let the other clans see how despicable you are." Although Lin Zhen and Zhang Longxiang did not speak, they knew that things were serious. Both of them retreated to the edge of the hall to avoid being implicated. Ji Tianqing glared at Chen Lan and said sternly, "I'll say it one last time. Hand over the primordial jade essence or you'll have to bear the consequences." Bear the consequences? Uncle Yan was completely enraged. His body shone with a dazzling divine light as his divine energy surged. "You've gone too far. I won't give in. If you want to bully young Master Lan, you'll have to go through me first." As he spoke, Uncle Yan stepped in front of Chen Lan and spoke in a dignified manner. "Young Master Lan, I'll cover your escape." Chen Lan had the same idea. However, how could he act so cowardly in front of so many people? His body shone with divine light as his divine energy surged. He said confidently, "Uncle Yan, we're disciples of the 100 Refinements ancient sect. Of course, we'll leave with our heads held high. I'd like to see what kind of ability this guy has to be so arrogant." Seeing Chen Lan and Uncle Yan's boiling fighting spirit, Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianqing also laughed out of anger, their bodies bursting with fighting spirit. "What? Not only do you want to go back on your word, you want to fight? You want to fight now that you can't go back on your word? Who's afraid of who? Come on." The two brothers stepped forward and stood on Ji Tianqing's left and right. The atmosphere in the hall instantly became hostile. On the surface, Chen Lan and Uncle Yan only had 2 people while Ji Tianqing had 3 people. Moreover, Ji Tianqing was a senior expert with a mysterious background. Chen Lan and Uncle Yan's aura was immediately suppressed. Their eyes were filled with fear. Uncle Yan frowned and instructed Chen Lan via voice transmission. "Young Master Lan, I'll hold the 3 of them back. You take the opportunity to escape from the back. As long as you shake them off, they will be wary of the 100 Refinement ancient sect and won't do anything to me." This time their conversation would not be heard by anyone else. Without waiting for Uncle Yan to finish, Chen Lan replied without hesitation, "All right, then be careful." Uncle Yan's expression was a little strange, and he quickly swallowed the rest of his words back into his stomach. In the next moment, he shouted in a tragic tone and waved his fists to attack Ji Tianqing. "This old man will not tolerate your bullying." Uncle Yan used all of his power and instantly sent out 49 flaming fists towards Ji Tianqing, Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianqing. Each of the flaming fists was as big as a water tank, and their divine power was violent. They also contained dozens of divine Tao laws, and their power was terrifying. Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianqing's expressions were solemn. They used all of their divine power to block and neutralize Uncle Yan's attack. However, before they could do anything, they saw a blur in front of their eyes, and a sky full of sword light bloomed. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Ji Tianqing had made his move. Unknowingly, he held the sword of burial of heaven in his right hand and instantly sent out 49 flaming white sword lights to meet Uncle Yan's attack. Bang! 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 Muffled sounds erupted as the 49 flaming fist lights were shattered by the sword light, and divine flames that covered the heavens and the earth burst forth. However, the white sword lights tore through space and caused a few pitch-black voids to appear in the hall. The divine flames that covered the sky and earth were all swallowed by the dark voids, and no one was harmed. Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tiansheng were shocked. Lin Zhan and Zhan Longxiang were secretly relieved, and their respect for Ji Tianqing grew. Uncle Yin was also stunned. He had expected Ji Tianqing to be more powerful than him, most likely a high-level divine lord. However, he had never thought that Ji Tianqing would use such a simple and violent method to neutralize his attack. The hall was still intact, and his plan to create chaos and give Chun Lan a chance to escape had failed. However, he didn't want to give up. He shouted again and used a divine power. This time he had learned his lesson. Attacking Ji Tianqing was secondary. His main goal was to disperse his attacks and destroy the entire hall to create chaos. However, Uncle Yen was about to use his divine power when he saw a blur in front of his eyes and a figure appeared out of nowhere. In his eyes there was a fist that was rapidly enlarging. Uncle Yen realized that something was wrong and instinctively wanted to retreat. However, it was too late. Boom! With a loud bang, Ji Tianqing's golden left fist hit Uncle Yan's forehead. Uncle Yen was immediately sent flying and smashed into the wall 100 feet away. More than half of the wall collapsed, and countless pieces of rock were sent flying. Uncle Yen, on the other hand, fell to the ground. His consciousness was blurry and he was unconscious. It was obvious that Ji Tianqing's punch had passed through his forehead and hit his mind, knocking him out. Swish! While the divine light flashed and the pieces of rock were sent flying, Chun Lan decisively retreated and passed through the collapsed wall, trying to escape the gold osmanthus palace. However, he had just flown out of the hall and appeared in the sky above the manor when a white figure flashed in front of him. Ji Tianqing had blocked his way. Swish! Chun Lan didn't hesitate and used his teleportation technique to move a few thousand miles away from Changle City. Unfortunately, the moment he used his teleportation ability, Ji Tianqing slashed out a blazing white sword light and sealed off the entire space of the Gold Laurel Palace. The space around Chun Lan froze. He was like a mosquito in ice, unable to move at all. Swish! A cold light flashed, and the pitch-black and cold sword of burial of heaven was placed against his neck. Chun Lan's body stiffened and his expression turned ugly. He didn't dare to act rashly. The battle had just begun, but it ended abruptly just like that. Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tiansheng, who had followed closely behind, held their divine weapons and looked murderous. However, when they saw that Uncle Yen had been knocked unconscious and Chun Lan had surrendered, they were stunned and quickly put away their weapons. Soon, Lin Zhan and the battle dragon elephant appeared in the courtyard. Chun Lan was utterly humiliated in front of everyone. He was furious and humiliated to the extreme. He made up his mind and roared at Ji Tianqing. "I don't have the jade essence, but I do have a life." Ji Tianqing narrowed his eyes and exuded a bone-chilling aura. He asked in a low voice, "Are you sure?" Seeing that he was really angry and filled with murderous intent, Chun Lan didn't doubt that he would really kill him. Thus, Chun Lan quickly corrected himself. I'm not sure. Senior, I was just joking." However, he still wanted to give it a try and make a final effort. After persuading them earnestly, he looked at Lin Zhan and Zhan Longxiang expectantly and asked, "May I ask if you are willing to join the Jiang clan?" Lin Zhan and Zhan Longxiang looked at Ji Tianqing at the same time and nodded. "I'm willing." Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tiansheng were both overjoyed and surprised. Seeing that they were one step closer to success, the two of them felt a little nervous. Jiang Tiansheng asked carefully, Even if the other party joins the Jiang clan, you don't mind? Lin Zhan and Zhang Longxiang looked at each other and turned their heads away with contempt and disdain. The two of them looked at Ji Tianxing and nodded at the same time. We don't mind. What? Are you serious? Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianxing were stunned. They thought they had heard wrongly and were in disbelief. They didn't expect the two blacksmithing geniuses to change their minds and join the Jiang clan at the same time. This was definitely a pleasant surprise. Seeing the two brothers so excited and in disbelief, Lin Zhan and Zhang Longxiang nodded again to confirm. Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianxing were sure that they didn't hear wrongly and didn't see wrongly. They couldn't hold back their excitement and cheered. That's great. Both of you know the big picture. You are indeed talented. The Jiang clan needs geniuses like you. That's right. You can't throw away your bright future just because of a fit of pique. You have chosen to join the Jiang clan. This is the best decision you have made in your life. For many years to come, you will thank yourselves for making the right choice. The two brothers were excited and in high spirits. At this moment, Zhang Longxiang asked, May I know what position Senior Tianxing holds in the Jiang clan? May I be so bold and shameless as to ask to be Senior Tianxing's disciple? Will I be so lucky? Lin Zhan panicked when he heard Zhang Longxiang speak first. He quickly said, I was about to say this, but Zhang Longxiang beat me to it. I Lin Zhan beg Senior Tianxing to take me in. Although I am mediocre and stupid, I dare not hope for Senior's love. But as long as Senior agrees, even if this disciple has to follow by your side as a servant, I'm willing to do so. Zhang Longxiang looked sideways and shouted angrily, Lin Zhan, how can you be so shameless? I was the one who suggested it first. Lin Zhan smirked and raised his chin. So what if you said it first? The key is who Senior Tianxing chooses. Zhang Longxiang said angrily, even if he chooses me, he won't choose you. You greasy-faced, hypocritical, cunning fellow. Lin Zhan still smirked. That's because you're too dumb and stupid. It'd be strange if Senior likes you. The two blacksmithing geniuses started arguing in front of everyone again. Ji Tianxing looked indifferent and did not take it to heart. Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianxing were dumbfounded. The two brothers looked at each other awkwardly and secretly communicated with each other through voice transmission. Looks like we're thinking too much. The two of them are willing to join the Jiang clan not because they've thought it through, but because of young Master Tianxing. That's right. If they were attracted by the Jiang clan's environment and resources, they would have agreed from the start. Now that they're arguing so fiercely, it's all for young Master Tianxing. There's no choice. Young Master Tianxing is too mysterious and demonic. The two of them would rather be young Master Tianxing's servants than join our Jiang clan. We really have to thank young Master Tianxing for this. He's helped us a lot. If not for him, this matter would not have been resolved. One of the geniuses would have been snatched away by Chen Lan. Then why didn't you believe me before? Why did you doubt young Master Tianxing's ability? Seventh brother, don't blame me. I was worried that things would go wrong and we'd lose two blacksmithing geniuses. But speaking of which, my attitude was not good and I offended young Master Tianxing. I'll have to apologize to him later. I hope he won't take it to heart. He's our Jiang clan's benefactor. If the clan leader knows that I offended him, he'll skin me alive. The two brothers whispered to each other through telepathy. Lin Zhan and Zhang Longxiang stopped arguing. This was because Ji Tianxing said something. I haven't taken in any disciples for many years, nor have I taught others how to refine weapons. Since you've joined the Jiang clan, someone will naturally arrange for your cultivation and learning. Chapter 3483. Ji Tianxing refused. The two blacksmithing geniuses had nothing to fight over. After all, this senior of the Jiang clan had a high status. His abilities and methods were too mysterious. Although the two of them had pretty good talent in artifact refinement, they were only two high divine lords. They definitely did not have the qualifications to discuss any conditions with a divine king powerhouse. Jiang Tianxing asked when he saw that Lin Zhan and the battle dragon elephant were silent. Their expressions and eyes were filled with disappointment and regret. Then are you still willing to join the Jiang clan? As soon as he said it, he regretted it. Jiang Tianyi even glared at him and scolded him through voice transmission. Are you a pig? Jiang Tianxing wanted to slap himself. Luckily, Lin Zhan and Zhan Longxiang hesitated for a while and smiled bitterly. Since we've agreed to join the Jiang clan, how can we go back on our words? Although we're not strong enough, we won't go back on our words. We'll definitely fulfill our promise. Although they did not meet their expectations, they could not take back their words. A man could not live without integrity. If the two of them couldn't even do this, how could they maintain their firm will and become divine blacksmiths that they would look up to for the rest of their lives? Not long after, Ji Tianxing, Jiang Tianyi, and the rest left the Gold Laurel Palace. Previously, they had spent nearly 28 days in the Gold Laurel Palace to compete in refining weapons. But in reality, only 5 days and a few hours had passed in the outside world. When they left the Gold Laurel Palace, the sky was just starting to brighten. Jiang Tianyi looked at Lin Zhan and Zhan Longxiang and said, "We'll be leaving Chang'e City soon and returning to the Divine Attraction Grotto Heaven. You have 6 hours to pack your bags and say goodbye to your families. At noon, we'll meet at the south gate of Chang'e City." Lin Zhan and Zhan Longxiang nodded to show that they understood. Then they bowed and left. After they returned home, Jiang Tianyi brought Jiang Tianxing and Ji Tianxing to the south gate of Chang'e City. The three of them bathed in the morning mist and breathed in the fresh air. They were in a good mood. Of course, the Jiang brothers were excited because they had won against the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect and obtained 2 blacksmithing geniuses. The reason Ji Tianxing was so happy was because of the primordial chalcedony. 100,000-year-old primordial chalcedony. Its effects were even more ferocious than high-grade king-grade divine pills. I have to find some time to refine it and break through to the 3rd heaven of the God King realm. After reaching the 3rd stage realm, you're not far from becoming a middle divine king. He calculated in his heart that after he became a middle-level God King, he would be able to sweep away all of the middle-level God Kings. Even if he met a 7th stage realm high-level God King, he would not be afraid at all. Just as Ji Tianxing was filled with longing, Jiang Tianxing's voice rang in his ears. "Young Master Tianxing, I would like to solemnly apologize to you for my previous recklessness and rudeness. It's my fault for being blind and lacking in knowledge." Ji Tianxing's thoughts were interrupted. He looked sideways at Jiang Tianxing and frowned. He didn't say anything, but Jiang Tianxing's heart skipped a beat. He thought to himself, "It's over. Is my apology not sincere enough? From the looks of it, you must be holding a grudge against me. What should I do?" When he thought of this, he looked at Jiang Tianyi for help. Jiang Tianyi was also very worried. He hurriedly persuaded, "Young Master Tianxing, 9th brother is young and ignorant. He didn't mean to offend you. Please forgive us." As they spoke, the 2 brothers bowed apologetically, as if they were admitting their mistakes and apologizing for their sins. Ji Tianxing was even more speechless. He chuckled and said, "Am I such a petty person?" Jiang Tianxing was about to say something, but Jiang Tianyi secretly pinched him and answered with a smile, "Of course not. But 9th brother must apologize for his mistake. I hope you can forgive him." "Alright, I never blamed him in the first place. There's no need to talk about forgiveness." Ji Tianxing waved his hand. Seeing this, Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianxing heaved a sigh of relief. The 2 brothers hurriedly followed Ji Tianxing's footsteps. Jiang Tianyi asked, "Young Master Tianxing, how do you know so much about the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect? Also, we've only heard of the 100 Refinement Divine Hammer. Not only do you know it thoroughly, you even have the blueprint?" Jiang Tianxing hurried over and asked mysteriously, "Young Master Tianhang, the blueprint of the 100 smelting divine hammer must be fake, right? You only used it to provoke Chunlan and make him agree to compete with you, because you're certain that you can win and take away his primordial jade essence, right?" Jiang Tianxing was very agitated and spoke very quickly, but just as he finished speaking, he was slapped by Jiang Tianyi on the back of his head and rolled his eyes. Jiang Tianxing finally reacted. He was too agitated and said the wrong thing again. Although Jiang Tianyi also suspected that Ji Tianxing's blueprint was fake, he still thought about it. But this was something that everyone could only think in their hearts. How could they ask? What surprised Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tiansheng even more was that Ji Tianqing was not angry. Instead, he said calmly, "Is it important whether it's real or fake? Anyway, Chunlan didn't get it, right?" The two brothers immediately understood and nodded their heads. Yes, young Master Tianqing is right. Too amazing. Indeed, the older the ginger, the spicier it is. Too admirable. After a round of flattery, Jiang Tiansheng raised another question. But, young Master Tianqing, although we know that the blueprint is fake, Chunlan and the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect are certain that it's real. This news will definitely spread to the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect. Those old fellows will definitely go crazy looking for you. No matter what method they use, they will definitely get the blueprint. Won't you be in danger then? Before Ji Tianqing could reply, Jiang Tianyi glared at Jiang Tiansheng again. If young Master Tianqing isn't worried, what are you worried about? Moreover, young Master Tianqing is very powerful. He said that even Su Bai Lian has to call him senior. What's there to worry about? Moreover, young Master Tianqing wants to follow us back to the Divine Attraction Grotto. Those old fellows from the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect won't dare to barge into the Divine Attraction Grotto and snatch him from the Jiang clan. Jiang Tiansheng pondered for a while and felt that it made sense. He nodded his head and said, "That's right. Then we have nothing to worry about." Unknowingly, the three of them had passed through Changle City and arrived at the South Gate. Originally, the three of them were going to wait for Lin Zhan and Zhanlong Xiang at the South Gate. However, Ji Tianqing did not want to waste time. He entered Jiang Tianyi's palace first. He entered the secret room, took out the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes pagoda, and entered the distorted space to cultivate. Although he said that he was going to cultivate in seclusion, he was actually going to use the time to refine the primordial jade marrow and break through to the 3rd level of the Divine King realm as soon as possible. Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tiansheng could only wait at the city gate. It was still early. The two brothers had nothing to do, so they started to chat. "Seventh brother, how did you meet young Master Tianqing? How can there be such a coincidence? Oh right, what's his cultivation level? Logically speaking, he saved the Jiang clan 1,000 years ago. He should be a peak divine king, right? But why doesn't he look like one?" Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 3484. Even though the Jiang clan did not have a peak divine king, but there were still a few high-ranked divine kings. But Jiang Tiansheng observed Ji Tianqing for so long and did not see any signs or aura of a high-ranked divine king. Jiang Tianyi also frowned, recalling the scene of Ji Tianqing and Bai Feng fighting back then. He was very clear that Bai Feng only had 7th-level divine king realm strength, an existence at the bottom of the hierarchy among high-ranked divine kings. But Ji Tianqing fought with Bai Feng for so long. Not only did he not win easily, he was even injured, appearing a little wretched. This proved that Ji Tianqing's strength was inferior to Bai Feng's, which was also to say that not only was he not a peak divine king, he was not even a high-ranked divine king. Because of this, Jiang Tianyi also suspected before in his heart and muttered for a long time. But apart from that, Ji Tianqing's performance did not have any problems. For a moment he was also somewhat at a loss. Seeing his reaction, Jiang Tianyi could not resist asking, "Seventh brother, this young Master Tianqing's strength. There wouldn't really be a problem, right?" Jiang Tianyi waved his hand and said, "Although there are some problems, I still can't figure it out until now. But don't pursue it either. Everyone has their own experiences, stories, and unspeakable troubles. Rashly probing into other people's past will incur enmity in light cases and enmity in heavy cases. You have to remember this point and never do it again in the future. Furthermore, young Master Tianqing has no ill intentions towards us and even helped us greatly. That's enough." Jiang Tianyi nodded half understanding and did not say anything else. Finally 6 hours passed. The scorching sun rose into the sky. Lin Zhan and Zhanlong Xiang arrived at the southern city gate one after another. Lin Zhan was escorted out of Perpetual Joy City by the Lin family, full of reluctance. Zhanlong Xiang's situation was much bleaker. There were only a few junior brothers and sisters behind him. Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianyi were both divine kings, high and mighty major figures. They naturally would not persuade the Lin family and Perpetual Joy Dao College people. The two of them watched coldly from the sidelines, silently watching Lin Zhan and Zhang Longxiang wave goodbye to their family and friends. Then Jiang Qianni took out his palace and brought the two artifact refinement geniuses into the firmament, flying away. On the other side, Chun Lan and Uncle Yan were on a divine ship, flying towards the southeast at lightning speed. Uncle Yan's injuries were not serious, and he had already regained consciousness. However, his face was very gloomy, and his eyes flashed with terrifying killing intent. Chun Lan's face was also dark. Her aura was ice-cold and she was silent. Although the two of them did not speak, their thoughts were the same. Chun Lan had already sent a message to the left protector and sect master of the 100 Refinements ancient sect about what had happened in the Gold Kasha Palace. However, the two of them still felt that they had to return to the 100 Refinements ancient sect as soon as possible and explain some matters to the left protector and the sect master. Both of them were silent for a long time. Uncle Yan suddenly opened his mouth and exhorted Chun Lan, "Young Master Lan, although I was injured by Tianqing and your primordial jade essence was cheated by him, I still have a chance. However, these were all trivial matters. Even if the left protector and the sect master knew about it, they might not make a big fuss over it. Therefore, the main point of our report is the blueprint of the 100 refining divine hammer. Only the blueprint can provoke the elders, the two protectors and the sect master. Believe me, if we make use of the blueprint, the sect master, the protectors, and the elders will go crazy and attack Tianqing with all their might. When that happens, our chance for revenge will come." Uncle Yan's tone was very serious, and his words were very sincere. There was also a hint of hatred in his voice. However, Chun Lan was very upset. When he heard the two words Tianqing, he was about to explode. His chest was burning with flames, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. As such, he growled impatiently, "Of course I know that. Do I need you to remind me? Of course your injuries are not important. However, my primordial jade essence is very important. That is a treasure that I am saving for when I break through to the upper divine king stage. That's my lifeblood. Do you understand?" Uncle Yan was flustered by Chun Lan's roar. He subconsciously looked below Chun Lan's waist. "What are you looking at?" Chun Lan glared at him with reddened eyes and growled again. Uncle Yan was completely speechless. He decided to ignore him and focus on driving the divine warship. At the same time, in a certain empire in the middle of the Hengshan region, a dazzling golden light streaked across the sky like an aurora, flying towards the south. The object in the golden light was not the divine warship. Instead, it was a huge hairpin that was about 1,000 feet long. Without a doubt, this was the space-piercing hairpin of the divine envoy Shadow Executioner. Inside the space-piercing hairpin, there were only divine envoy Shadow Executioner, divine envoy Ku Yun, divine envoy Xingxiang, and Bai Feng. Over the past few days, the four divine kings had been taking turns to drive the space-piercing hairpin, rushing to the Hengshan region as quickly as possible. During this process, the three divine envoys even asked Bai Feng to cast a spell to detect the whereabouts of Ji Tianqing and the others. Fortunately, the results of Bai Feng's investigation allowed the three divine envoys to heave a sigh of relief. Ji Tianqing and the others were still in the Hengshan region. Furthermore, they had stopped within the Hengshan Empire and had not moved. This result caused the three divine envoys' eyes to light up. They were filled with hope. Could it be that those traitors are hiding in the Hengshan Empire and not running away anymore? Haha. They must have thought that they would be safe after escaping into the Hengshan region and hiding within the Hengshan Empire. But they would never have imagined that we still have Divine King Bai Feng. No matter where they escape to, Divine King Bai Feng will be able to find them. Since they are hiding in the Hengshan Empire and not leaving, then things will be easy. Thus, the space-piercing hairpin rushed towards the Hengshan Empire. The three divine envoys also made up their minds to find Ji Tianqing and the others even if they had to dig 3 feet into the ground. Just this afternoon, after the space-piercing hairpin entered the Hengshan Empire, the three divine envoys then asked Bai Feng to cast a secret spell to detect the whereabouts of Ji Tianqing and the others. Although they knew that Ji Tianqing and the others were in the Hongshan Empire, the Hongshan region was too large. However, the Hongshan Empire was too big, so it was impossible to find Ji Tianqing and the others in a short period of time. Only when Bai Feng cast a secret spell to roughly determine the whereabouts of Ji Tianqing and the others would they be able to search for them. Hearing the orders of the 3 divine envoys, Bai Feng felt like cursing in his heart. Every time he cast a secret spell, he would use up a huge amount of divine power. His mind would also be extremely tired. More importantly, he could vaguely sense that every time he cast a secret spell, it would affect his lifespan and divine Tao foundation. Thus, he would only cast it once or twice every few years. But now he had to use it every few days. Moreover, the 3 divine envoys were staring at him with a firm attitude. He had to cast a secret spell. Apart from casting a secret spell, he also had to take turns controlling the space-piercing hairpin. Bai Feng was already very tired. He felt like he was about to be hollowed out, but he could not disobey the orders. He could only grit his teeth and continue casting the secret spell. Finally, he found the whereabouts of Ji Tianqing and the others. They are still in the Hongshan Empire, but they have already moved. They are fleeing towards the south. After he found out, Bai Feng collapsed to the ground with a pale face. He was completely exhausted. Chapter 3485. Unfortunately, the 3 divine envoys only cared about the results. They did not care about Bai Feng's condition. Was he tired? Could he persevere? At this moment they were all very excited, and they looked as if they were determined to win. That's great. They are still in the Hongshan Empire and are not far from us. That's not right. They did not move for the past few days. Why did they suddenly move today? Could it be that they also have some divine ability that can detect our approach? That's impossible. They are not Bai Feng. How could they have such ability? No matter what, we are now in the Hongshan Empire and are very close to them. Didn't they escape towards the south? Let's just chase them towards the south. If there are no accidents, we can find them within 2 days at most. Alright, let's fly towards the south now. At the same time, inform the group of God Kings behind us to catch up as soon as possible. The 3 divine envoys discussed for a while and quickly came up with a plan. Throughout the entire process, no one looked at Bai Feng. Bai Feng forcefully propped up his nearly unconscious body and crawled up from the ground. He silently put away his command flag. Then, he sat cross-legged on the ground and consumed a divine pill to recover his divine power. As for where Ji Tianqing and the others were and when they would be caught, he did not care at all. He only knew. He was very tired now. His entire body had been hollowed out, and his mind was in a daze. If he did not properly recuperate, his foundation of the divine Tao would be destroyed. Not to mention that he would become a cripple, but his strength would also regress and affect his future cultivation. Of course, recuperating was not something that could be completed in 3 to 5 days. If possible, he really wanted to recuperate in seclusion for 3 to 5 years. Inside the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes pagoda, only a day and a half had passed in the outside world. But Ji Tianqing had already been in seclusion for 2.5 months. In these 2.5 months he only did one thing. Refine the primordial chalcedony. Although a 100,000-year-old primordial chalcedony was an excellent God King grade material, if he spent some time and effort and added a few top-grade herbs, he could refine it into a high-grade King grade divine pill. After consuming it, the effects would be excellent and its power would double. However, Ji Tianqing could not wait any longer. He had neither the time nor the means to find so many top-notch medicinal herbs. After all, wanting to gather those few medicinal herbs, they very likely had to search the entire boundless heaven continent. He might even have to enter the grotto heavens and blessed lands to make deals with the ancient clans. In fact, he even had to leave the firmament and enter the void to search for some of the top-tier materials. After some rough estimation, these things were not something that could be completed in 3 to 5 years. At least 100 years. How could Ji Tianqing have so much time to waste? Therefore, he chose to refine the primordial chalcedony directly. This was the simplest and most crude method. Of course, the effect was also the weakest. If one were to say that refining the primordial chalcedony into a high-grade king-level divine pill would double the effects, then refining it into a high-grade king-level divine pill would have double the effect. If he directly refined the primordial jade marrow now, he would only have 60% to 70% of the effect. But Ji Tianqing didn't care. The primordial chalcedony was precious, but the treasures he had in his previous life were much more valuable than it. Furthermore, he was confident that he would obtain more treasures similar to the primordial chalcedony in the future. 2.5 months was enough for Ji Tianqing to completely refine the primordial chalcedony. What was gratifying was that the effect was not bad. He successfully absorbed the energy of the primordial chalcedony, and his divine power increased by several times. Then, he naturally broke through to the third level of the Divine King realm. That was not all. After breaking through to the third level of the Divine King realm, his power was still increasing rapidly without any signs of stopping. Every few days his power would increase by 1-fold. After 2.5 months, when the potential of the primordial chalcedony was exhausted, he reached the third level of the Divine King realm. That's right. He was indeed in the third level of the Divine King realm, just one step away from the Great Circle. In other words, he was only 2 steps away from becoming a 4th-level Divine King. This result surprised Ji Tianqing. But after thinking about it carefully, it was reasonable. In my previous life, I once obtained a portion of the primordial chalcedony from the left guardian of the 100 Refinements ancient sect. I spent a lot of time and effort to refine it into a king-grade high-grade divine pill. After consuming it, my power did increase by 1-fold. But at that time I was in the 9th level of the Divine King realm, very close to the peak. Now, I am only in the 2nd level of the Divine King realm. It is normal for me to have such an effect after refining a portion of the primordial chalcedony. Ji Tianqing thought about it and felt relieved, but he still felt that it was a pity. He sighed to himself. Sigh. It is a pity that there is not much of this primordial chalcedony. If there was half more, I would be able to break through to the 4th level of the Divine King realm. At that time, I would be able to become a middle-level Divine King and save so much time. His situation was getting more and more dangerous. Therefore, his desire for power was getting stronger and stronger. It was also because of this that he wasted such a precious item, and could not wait to refine the primordial chalcedony. Phew, after ending his seclusion, Ji Tianqing let out a long breath and decided to leave the distorted space-time. Swoosh! He left the divine pagoda and returned to the secret room in the Palace of Heaven's Will. At this time the door of the secret room flashed with divine light and let out a series of hurried chimes. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing, who was originally in a relaxed and happy mood, suddenly frowned and the smile on his face disappeared. What's going on? Why is it so urgent that Jiang Tianyi directly knocked on the door? This thought flashed through his mind. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and cast a spell to open the door of the secret room. The moment the door of the secret room opened, Ji Tianqing saw an anxious young man in golden armor standing outside the door. It was not Jiang Tianyi but Jiang Tiansheng. Ji Tianqing had just stepped out of the secret room, and did not even have time to ask Jiang Tiansheng what had happened. Jiang Tiansheng was burning with anxiety. He shouted at an extremely fast speed, "Young Master Tianqing, we have been intercepted." As he spoke, he could not help but pull Ji Tianqing towards the palace's main entrance. Intercepted? By who? Ji Tianqing asked with a frown as he quickly followed and walked towards the main entrance. I don't know them, but those 4 fellows are all God Kings. As Jiang Tiansheng spoke, he unsheathed his sword and exuded an intense fighting spirit. 7th brother said that he knows one of the God Kings and that he is currently dealing with them. Jiang Tianqing's words were muddled, and Ji Tianqing did not understand what was going on. He simply stopped asking Jiang Tiansheng and flew to the palace's main entrance in a flash. Then he clearly saw the scene outside the palace and understood what was going on. The Palace of Heaven's Will was located in the southernmost part of the Hongshan Empire, not far from the border. The palace was suspended in the air above a barren mountain range, surrounded by clouds and mist. 100 miles ahead, within the hazy clouds, there were indeed 4 God Kings. They fanned out and blocked the palace's path. Ji Tianqing recognized two of the god kings. They were Stellar Aspect and Bai Feng. There was no doubt that Stellar Aspect and the others had found their way here. Chapter 3486. Ji Tianqing was still in a daze when he saw Oracle Xingxiang, Bai Feng, and the others. There was only one thought in his mind. Although I already knew that Divine Emissary Stellar Aspect had gathered 2 Divine Emissaries and many God Kings to try and kill me on a grand scale, I didn't expect that Divine Emissary Stellar Aspect would try to kill me. But shouldn't they be in the Red Dragon region? Why are they in the Hengshan Empire? Could it be that our whereabouts have been exposed? Oracle Xingxiang has this ability? No, it's definitely not Oracle Xingxiang. Looking at Bai Feng's tired face, it should be related to him. Ji Tianqing vaguely remembered that Bai Feng was not only a high-level god king, but also had the bloodline of the Phoenix clan and a pair of mysterious god eyes. Therefore, Ji Tianqing's first suspect was Bai Feng. Actually, Bai Feng felt very bitter. He was already dog-tired. Wasn't it comfortable to rest in the sky-piercing hairpin? He could rest for 3 to 5 years, and when he returned to his peak, he would be a good man again. But Oracle Xingxiang was different. In just a day and a half, he was lucky enough to block Zhang Tiany's palace. And Oracle Xingxiang was even more shameless. He had just blocked Zhang Tiany's palace when he put away the sky-piercing hairpin. Then, the 3 divine envoys appeared in the sky with murderous looks on their faces. They fanned out to block the path of the palace. Bai Feng was naturally in trouble. After the sky-piercing hairpin was put away, he appeared in the sky. And he was defenseless, mentally exhausted, and his god power was weak. This was very awkward. He wanted to be like the 3 oracles, blocking the sky with murderous intent. But he could not. He felt that he was not qualified to participate in this battle. Yes, he was not qualified. Even though he was a high-level god king in his current situation, he could not even take down Zhang Tiansheng and Zhang Tiany, let alone Ji Tianqing. He wanted to return to the sky-piercing hairpin or leave this place to find a place to rest. However, the atmosphere in the field was tense and full of murderous intent. He could not open his mouth. Therefore, he could only stay in the sky to make up the numbers. At most, he did not make a sound and tried to reduce his presence. But even so, when Zhang Tiany walked out of the palace gate, he noticed him at first glance. When Ji Tianqing appeared at the gate of the palace, he also saw him at first glance. As for the first glance, of course, it was at Oracle Xingxiang. Both parties hovered in the sky, 100 miles apart, looking at each other. Ji Tianqing and Zhang Tiany's eyes were filled with murderous, intense eyes. On the other hand, Stellar Aspect Ambassador was filled with pride, excitement, and excitement. His face was filled with a sinister and cruel sneer. He's his Xiangz's Chen Xiang's at the very least. Zhang Tiany and Zhang Tiany could clearly sense Oracle Xingxiang's. They could not imagine just how much Ji Tianqing had offended Stellar Aspect Emissary to such an extent that he would hate Ji Tianqing so much. Ji Tianqing was not worried or hesitant at all. He glanced at Oracle Xingxiang and said, "You've been looking for helpers to kill me, there's nothing strange about that. But aren't you going to introduce those 2 fellows beside you? And what's with that soft-footed Bai Feng?" Ji Tianqing was not anxious at all, and there was not even much anger or killing intent on his face. It was just a casual question as if he was chatting, but there was a hint of mockery in his tone. Oracle Xingxiang was not stupid. He did not reveal Bai Feng's God Eyes Supremes. Instead, he pointed to the 2 oracles on his left and right and introduced, "These 2 are the same as me, the God Emperor's patrol envoys, the overseers of the boundless heaven continent. Tianqing, although you are beyond redemption and will die without a doubt, I still have to advise you. But this prince still wants to give you a word of advice. Obediently allow yourself to be captured and stretch out your neck to be executed. Don't wait for us to act, otherwise, you won't even have a complete corpse left." Such a simple sentence, but it contained an intense, tyrannical, killing intent. Clearly, Oracle Xingxiang was certain that Ji Tianqing was in his grasp. In his opinion, with him and the two oracles present plus Bai Feng, it was enough to take down Ji Tianqing easily. Even if there were any mistakes or mishaps, the other 11 God Kings would quickly arrive. They only needed to delay for 2 to 4 hours, and they would still be able to kill Ji Tianqing. In short, Ji Tianqing was dead meat. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and said indifferently, with Bai Feng's current state, it's hard to say if she can even stand up, let alone participate in the battle. So, with just the 3 of you, you want to take us down? It's a fool's dream. I remember that among the helpers you gathered, there were not only these 2 oracles, but also many God Kings. If I'm not wrong, you are just the vanguard rushing over to stop me. There are also more than 10 God Kings on the way to support you, right? Actually, this question was not difficult to guess. However, for Ji Tianqing to say it so openly, it still made Celestial Aspect Emissary feel very awkward. It felt as if Ji Tianqing had seen through him and seen through all his trump cards. Oracle Xingxiang was inexplicably panicked and worried. He felt that since Ji Tianqing knew all this and could still remain calm, he must have some trump card. But the 2 oracles, Zhang and Ku Yuan, did not think so much. The 2 oracles sneered, looking confident and domineering. Ha ha ha. Traitor, you're not too stupid. You know that you're on the path of no return, right? Little bastard, since you know that you're going to die, why are you still standing there? Kneel down and surrender? Although the 2 oracles had heard from Oracle Xingxiang that Ji Tianqing's strength and methods were extraordinary, they must be careful. But they had been oracles for thousands of years and were used to being domineering. They could not change their attitude of looking down on the common people in a short time. At this moment, they only wanted to see Ji Tianqing helplessly and hopelessly kneel down and beg for surrender. But when Oracle Xingxiang heard the words of his 2 companions, his face changed, and his eyes flashed with deep regret and anger. Damn it! You 2 bastards, can't you tell that he's just trying to trick us? Of course, he only thought about it in his mind and did not dare to say it out loud. After all, Ku Yuan and Zhang had the same status as him. Moreover, he had begged Zhang and Ku Yuan to help. No matter how angry and dissatisfied he was, Oracle Xingxiang did not know how to hold it in. He hurriedly changed the topic, trying to stall for time. But Ji Tianqing suddenly sneered and did not waste any more time. Haha, if that's the case, then you can go to hell. As he sneered, Ji Tianqing turned into a dazzling golden light and rushed toward Oracle Xingxiang. Jiang Tianyi also put away his palace. Together with Jiang Tiansheng, he unsheathed his divine sword and attacked. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.